The man was the strongest shaman in H country. Back when he was 18, his very first ritual shattered both legs of the bully who had tormented him. Later, when that bully tried to get revenge by burning down his home, the man simply summoned a female ghost and had her deal with him personally. In this world, shamans were no longer cheap frauds pretending to speak with spirits. They had a real hierarchy. Third-rate shamans served individuals and could only offer basic advice. Second-rate shamans served corporations and helped them chase profit. First-rate shamans served politicians, even manipulating elections to gain both fame and money. But once the company they served went bankrupt, or the politician behind them fell from power, their own ending would not be pretty either. And the man standing at the very top of that system was the first-rate shaman, Chon Ji-sung. Right now, he was flying by helicopter toward Yoido. Countless corporations had chosen to plant their roots there again. It was also a place where hundreds of billions could be made with terrifying ease, money ordinary people could never touch in a lifetime. On top of that, shaman culture thrived there, making it a gathering ground for the brightest stars in the shaman world. Even on the streets, shamans could be seen everywhere. Soon, Chon Ji-sung arrived at his destination, the place where he would be working today. His assistant had already arranged the entire schedule. Chon Ji-sung changed into the ceremonial outfit. Then he pushed open the door. Inside was a fully prepared ritual hall. Offerings, ritual tools, and even a live music troupe were all in place. This time, the goal was to make a company's stock price crash. For every 1% drop in the stock price, Chon Ji-sung would receive 1 billion in cash. Looking at the scale of the setup, Chon Ji-sung could not help but remark that they had really gone all out. He casually asked who the company had hired as his opponent. His assistant immediately answered that the other side had hired a shaman with 50 years of power. Ruma even said the recent off-market stock plunge was that shaman's doing. Chon Ji-sung only scoffed. The farther a shaman moved from his own home turf, the weaker his power became. And here, Chon Ji-sung could completely suppress him. Soon, the ritual music began. Chon Ji-sung started dancing to the rhythm. Then he personally slaughtered the offering. The sight made the nearby staff vomit on the spot. Chon Ji-sung lit the talisman. As a stream of water poured down, the ritual came to an end. At the same time, the stock market opened on the other side. Everyone in the exchange looked at one another in disbelief, because that company's stock had plunged straight to -10%. The man beside him finally realized that his company's shaman had lost, and he had lost to the king of grim slaughter. As expected, the other side's shaman had already been rushed to the hospital. Chon Ji-sung was a professional shaman who specialized in helping corporations make money, but long before he became one of the industry's best. 7 years ago, Chon Ji-sung lived in Moon Village with his grandmother. When she was young, Chon Ji-sung's grandmother had been the strongest shaman in the village, so their family had once been very wealthy. But now, all of her property had been taken away by her own children. In the end, Chon Ji-sung, an unwanted kid, could only depend on his grandmother for survival. Back when Chon Ji-sung was in high school, his grandmother developed dementia. Ever since then, Chon Ji-sung had been the one taking care of her daily life. That day, Chon Ji-sung left home to go to school. But when he checked the time, he realized he was about to be late. So he immediately broke into a sprint and rushed towards school. But his bad luck was not over yet. He was only one step away from entering the classroom. The moment Chon Ji-sung reached the door, he froze. His desk had been covered in red bean porridge, and the little group that bullied him was standing nearby, laughing and chatting like nothing had happened. The school bully, Kim Jae-hun, even acted completely innocent and greeted him. "It's the winter solstice today. I bought you some red bean porridge." Chon Ji-sung ignored him. He simply stepped forward and began cleaning his desk in silence. But Kim Jae-hun suddenly grabbed him and slammed him down onto the desk. "Who said you could clean it up? Are you trying to ignore your friend's kindness?" Chon Ji-sung lifted his head and glared at the bastard behind it all. That look actually made Kim Jae-hyun flinch for a second. But, to save face, Kim Jae-hyun still threatened him as Chon Ji-sung walked away. Chon Ji-sung still ignored him and slammed the door behind him. After he left, the group immediately started worrying whether Kim Jae-hyun had actually been scared. But Kim Jae-hyun only sneered. "Let him try. My dad's a pastor anyway." Every word from inside the classroom reached Chon Ji-sung's ears. Rage made him clench his fists, but he was not going to surrender like this, because he still had one final method of his own. First, Chon Ji-sung went to a butcher shop and bought blood sausage. Then, he went to the library and printed out a photo of Kim Jae-hyun. Finally, he returned home. His grandmother thought it was already time to eat, so Chun Ji-sung told her it was not dinner time yet. From her, he learned that the demolition crew had already come by. Chun Ji-sung started searching through the cabinet. Soon, he found a key. He turned back and told his grandmother they would eat soon and that there would be blood sausage today. Then, Chun Ji-sung walked up to a locked door. He took out the key and unlocked it. This was the ritual hall his grandmother had once used for her ceremonies. Chun Ji-sung had seen his grandmother perform rituals when he was little, and he knew a curse required 4 elements. The first was a target. The second was an offering. The third was music. And the last was a ritual tool. Once every preparation was complete, Chun Ji-sung immediately took his stance. The other guy had brought this on himself. Then, he rang the bell and began swinging the blade. When the music reached its climax, he first slashed through the photo. Then, with another strike, he cut the blood sausage apart. The noise inside the house quickly carried outside. The moment Lee Ju-en heard it, she knew someone inside was performing a ritual. Chulgon said he heard it too. But what Lee Ju-eun could not understand was this. The old woman inside had already lost her mind, so there was no way she could cast that kind of killing curse. She suspected someone else had entered the house. After checking, they concluded that only an old woman and her grandson were inside. Lee Ju-en ordered Chulgon to find out before nightfall whether Chun Ji-sung was the one performing the ritual, and what condition the cursed target was in. Chulgon agreed, and immediately drove off. Meanwhile, Chun Ji-sung, inside the house, had no idea what was happening outside. On the other side, Kim Jae-hyun was relaxing on the rooftop, smoking a cigarette. But the next second, he was suddenly burned by falling ash, lost his balance, and tipped backward. His whole body went tumbling straight off the building. That night, Chulgon reported back to Lee Ju-eun that the one who performed the ritual was indeed Chun Ji-sung. Lee Ju-eun wondered who he had targeted. The answer was the classmate who had been bullying him. Lee Ju-eun then asked about the target's current condition. Chulgon answered that the guy had fallen from a building that afternoon and broken both legs. Lee Ju-eun decided on the spot that she had to recruit this talented shaman. That evening, Chun Ji-sung opened the door and looked outside. Lee Ju-eun had already come to find him. Chun Ji-sung was confused. It was already so late, yet someone was still knocking on the door. At first, he thought they had come looking for his grandmother, but Lee Ju-eun said the person she wanted was Chun Ji-sung. Chun Ji-sung immediately found the whole thing strange, and the two of them even started whispering to each other right in front of him. Then, Lee Ju-eun took out some money and handed it to Chun Ji-sung. Chun Ji-sung assumed they were here to persuade him to stop, so he turned around, ready to send them away. But Lee Ju-eun grabbed him by the arm. She said she was willing to pay 20 times the minimum hourly wage to buy 1 hour of Chun Ji-sung's time. Then the three of them sat down in front of a small convenience store. Lee Ju-eun was still complaining that there was not even a single coffee shop on the street, which left Chun Ji-sung both amused and speechless. Then he took the soda she handed him. Chun Ji-sung asked, "So why exactly are you buying my time?" But Lee Ju-eun called him out directly, saying he was the one who had cast the killing curse today, and then told him about Kim Jae-hyun's current condition. At her words, Chun Ji-sung immediately felt guilty and started trying to defend himself. In the end, he even broke down and shouted that Kim Jae-hyun had started it first. But Lee Ju-eun did not care about any of that. What she cared about was Chun Ji-sung's talent. Chun Ji-sung did not want to get dragged into trouble, so he rejected Lee Ju-eun's offer outright. In response, Lee Ju-eun suddenly reached out and pinched his mouth shut. She stressed that she was the employer now, so he should shut up and listen properly. She was not asking him to curse someone to death. What she wanted him to curse was a company. Chun Ji-sung had never imagined that companies could be cursed too. Lee Ju-eun explained that if a shrine blessed and cast spells in favor of a company, that company's business would often run smoothly. On the other hand, if someone cast a killing curse on a company, problems would start breaking out one after another, and they could profit by predicting the movement of its stock price. That was why major companies hired shamans, even if it meant paying tens of billions. And Lee Ju-eun was someone who scouted shamans. She would put a proper price on Chun Ji-sung's ability. Chun Ji-sung stared at the business card in a daze. He wanted to become a shaman worth tens of billions too. Even if only a handful of people ever reached that level, with that kind of money, He could send his grandmother to a good nursing home. He could leave this neighborhood that might be demolished at any moment. He would not have to worry about money at 18 years old. And he could make the people who abandoned him see what he had become. 2.5 minutes later, Chon Ji-sung finally made his decision. Lee Ju-in asked for his answer, and Chon Ji-sung simply said he needed money. At that, Lee Ju-in finally breathed a sigh of relief. Then she prepared to take Chon Ji-sung for a test. Chon Ji-sung did not expect there to be a second round. Lee Ju-in explained that if she was handing him a high-paying job for free, she still had to see what he was capable of. Then, she told Cholgon to bring the car around for the test, adding that she would not make Chon Ji-sung work for nothing. She would pay Chon Ji-sung 3 million won for 6 hours. Chon Ji-sung quickly calculated it and realized that was 3 million won. Seeing his reaction, Lee Ju-in gave him a teasing smile. Once they got into the car, Lee Ju-in wanted to understand what type of curse Chon Ji-sung used, so she began questioning him. What are the 3 elements of your curse? Chon Ji-sung answered, the offering is blood sausage. Lee Ju-in nearly choked on his answer. The music was just some random death metal track he found on YouTube, and the ritual tool was something his grandmother had used before. Lee Ju-in never expected Chon Ji-sung to break someone's legs with such crude materials. If even one of those elements had been properly prepared, that guy might have died on the spot. Thinking of that, Lee Ju-in could not help feeling secretly excited. Meanwhile, Chon Ji-sung thought he had done something wrong. Next came the real preparation for the attack. A ritual would be held that night, and Chon Ji-sung would be the one leading it. First, the offering was chosen. A dead cow. Then, for the music, they selected a death metal band. Finally, for the ritual tool, they picked an old item with some history behind it. Before long, that day arrived. Inside was a dazzling, luxurious ritual hall. Chon Ji-sung had never been to a place like this before. Lee Ju-in explained that this was where he would show what he was capable of tonight. Chon Ji-sung had thought this would be some small-time job, but now it was clear they were dead serious. With one wave of her hand, Lee Ju-in told him to start the curse now. The target was a chat app called Stop Loss Talk. In essence, it was an app designed to handle complicated interpersonal relationships. And today, that app was Chon Ji-sung's target. But right now, he looked completely lost, unable to understand why they were showing him an ad first. Lee Ju-in began explaining it to him from the side. It was a social app that had blown up among Gen Z, already reaching 6.2 million registered users, making it the clear standout among recently released chat apps. What confused Lee Ju-in was that a kid like Chon Ji-sung somehow did not know about it. Chon Ji-sung was annoyed, but he still did not understand why he had to watch any of this. In truth, they had already made it clear the moment he walked in. There was only one purpose. They wanted Chon Ji-sung to cast a curse. Making the app's stock price fall was the test. Seeing how awkward Chon Ji-sung looked, Mayor Kim could not help doubting whether he was really capable of taking this test. After all, the parent company behind Stop Loss Talk, Sony Tech, had seen its stock price jump a full 33% after yesterday's official launch. So, Mayor Kim believed Chon Ji-sung did not have the ability to pull this off. But, if they wanted him to go toe-to-toe with a first-rate shaman, this level of test was necessary. Besides, they should not underestimate Chon Ji-sung too much. His grandmother had once saved him when he was on the verge of dying. They had to believe that miracles could be passed down through blood. With that, Lee Ju-in stepped forward and urged Chon Ji-sung to begin. Chon Ji-sung stared blankly at the spell in his hand. He had no idea how to perform a large-scale ritual like this, because aside from taking revenge, he had never truly led a proper ceremony before. But he could not back down, because his reality was already a cliff, with no way to retreat. All he could do was try. Chon Ji-sung immediately began moving. The music started at that very moment, and although the bassist knew nothing about rituals, even he could tell Chon Ji-sung could not keep up with the rhythm at all. One look at his guilty expression made it obvious something was wrong. But right as the bassist was about to slow down, so Chon Ji-sung could catch up, Lee Ju-in suddenly asked Cholgon whether he felt a chill. Obviously, he did not. Then she asked whether the room temperature had changed, but there was no change either. That made Mayor Kim decide on the spot to eliminate Chon Ji-sung. But Lee Ju-in had already strode forward. She raised her hand and slapped Chon Ji-sung hard across the face. Chon Ji-sung still wanted to ask why, but Lee Ju-in snapped in fury. I brought you here to show your power, not to put on some pathetic circus act. Chon Ji-sung protested innocently, saying he had already followed instructions, so what else did she want? But Li Juan could tell at a glance that this curse lacked killing intent. When Chen Ji-song cursed his bully before, that killing intent had been tiny, but at least it was there. Yet now, even with better conditions, there was no killing intent in the curse at all. Chen Ji-song immediately broke down, shouting that he had no reason to curse a company, and he had no experience doing it either, so how was he supposed to cast the curse properly? In truth, the method was simple. He only had to gather all the negative emotions inside him into one point, then let them explode. Chen Ji-sung clearly did not understand. So Li Juan gave him examples like the resentment he felt toward the parents who abandoned him, the helplessness of being unable to take proper care of his only family, the anxiety that came from having no money, the isolation of being unable to fit in with people his own age because he had no money and no parents, and the hatred built up from being bullied at school for so long. If that still was not enough, then he could add the humiliation from the slap just now and cast the curse again. Chen Ji-sung was furious, but what made him even more furious was that every word Li Juan said was true. Chen Ji-sung wanted to prove himself, and he wanted to seize this chance. So this time, he was going to get serious. First, he smeared blood across the wooden blade. Then, he flipped the wooden blade around. Seeing that, Li Juan signaled for them to start again. The next second, fierce music blasted through the room. Chen Ji-sung moved with the rhythm and began the blade dance. This time, he did not just keep up with the beat. He moved even faster than it. He kept going until he had drained the last bit of strength from his body. The sight made Chelgon shiver from the side. The temperature in the room began to drop as well. Li Juan stared at Chen Ji-sung's back. For a moment, she felt as if she were seeing his grandmother from back then. A second later, she froze completely. A black lotus had bloomed from Chen Ji-sung's chest. With that, the ritual came to an end. Tears slipped from Li Juan's eyes because she believed Chen Ji-sung would definitely become the strongest shaman. After finishing everything, Chen Ji-sung could no longer hold himself up. His strength gave out, and his consciousness began to blur. Right before he collapsed, he thought of his grandmother. Then, Chen Ji-sung fainted from blood loss. Seeing this, Li Juan rushed forward at once. She immediately checked Chen Ji-sung's condition. In the end, Chen Ji-sung was taken to the hospital. Meanwhile, inside an office building somewhere, a man was sitting anxiously in front of his computer. He was clearly one of the company's founding veterans, yet recently he had been subtly pushed to the sidelines, and he could feel that the app itself was starting to reject him. Then he opened his administrator privileges. He was hesitating over whether to open the user logs, because once he did, stop-loss talk would be destroyed for good. But he failed to notice that a door had suddenly appeared behind him. From inside that door, a ghostly hand stretched out. The hand slowly moved toward the man and made the choice for him. This was Chen Ji-sung's killing curse technique. Evil Spirit's Grasp. 8-armed ghost. By the time the man snapped back to his senses, a terrible mistake had already been made. By morning, Chen Ji-sung was still recovering in the hospital. Li Juan stayed by his side to look after him, then called the company's boss. The man on the other end was Justin, the CEO of Golden Cross. Justin immediately complained that Li Juan was calling way too early. Li Juan snapped back at him, asking if being early meant they could not make money. At that, Justin instantly perked up and told her to explain in detail. Li Juan ordered Justin to short Sony Tech as soon as the market opened. Justin could not quite believe it because Sony Tech's stock was steadily rising, but after thinking about it, he realized Li Juan would never have called unless she was confident. Li Juan asked how much liquid capital the company had. Justin answered that they had around 8 billion won. Li Juan immediately replied it was too little. Justin nearly jumped out of his seat. For one short selling move, 8 billion won was more than enough. Besides, he had not even agreed yet. Shorting a stock that was steadily rising was something that had to be handled with extreme caution. In response, Li Juan put up her own 2 billion won year-end bonus, but in return, she demanded that her commission rate be raised to 10%. Justin thought this money-obsessed woman had lost her mind. But it looked like she had found a new star, so he finally agreed. Still, Li Juan had one more thing to warn him about. She told Justin to stop sleeping with women in his arms so often, or he would lose his money luck. Justin immediately pushed away the two women beside him, because right now, all he cared about was making money. 2.5 hours later, Chen Ji-sung finally woke up. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw Li Juan standing there in a bathrobe. Chun Ji-sung instantly became flustered and hurriedly told her to put on some clothes. But Lee Ju-en changed the subject, saying the market was about to open, and this was the moment Chun Ji-sung's fate would change. However, that life-changing moment did not arrive so easily. What greeted them instead was a bitter silence. Sony Tech's stock price was still climbing. Chun Ji-sung began wondering whether something had gone wrong, because the company's stock was not falling at all. It was rising instead. Just then, Director Kim walked in and cut into the conversation, saying that if the company suffered a loss this time, Ju-en would be held responsible. But Lee Ju-en remained certain that the stock price would fall. Director Kim still looked doubtful. Lee Ju-en immediately grew irritated. She had made the company hundreds of billions, and her win rate was 82%. She was certain the stock would fall before the market closes. If there was a loss, she would take full responsibility, so the board should stop acting scared. Chun Ji-sung felt like he could barely breathe from the side. Even though he was not the one responsible, he could not understand why the woman in front of him was not shaken at all. 2.5 minutes later, the shift finally began, and the downward trend became more and more obvious. In the end, the stock price turned into a full-blown crash. Chun Ji-sung still was not sure whether he had succeeded, but the look on Lee Ju-en's face already said everything. The entire exchange exploded into chaos, and nobody knew what had just happened. Soon, rumors spread that insiders at the company had already started dumping their shares. Just then, one man suddenly drew everyone's attention. News came out that everything had happened because a developer had opened the login logs without permission. Everyone crowded around the screen to see a corrupted version of stop-loss talk. The news spread completely in no time. The culprit behind it all fled overseas that very same day. What followed was a massive user exodus, with nearly 1 million users deleting their accounts on that day alone. The app that had once been used to manage complicated relationships lost every bit of its credibility. After 3 straight crashes, its stock price was almost nothing more than scrap paper. Chun Ji-sung saw the news. Then he carelessly asked whether that meant he had succeeded. Even Lee Ju-en had not expected Chun Ji-sung to destroy an entire company with just one killing curse. To be exact, it was not just one company, but an entire division. At this point, calling him a monster was not even enough. This kid was clearly a human money printer. Without a doubt, Chun Ji-sung had passed the test with results far beyond expectation. That finally made him let out a sigh of relief. From that moment on, Chun Ji-sung officially became a shaman of Yeouido. Lee Ju-en told Chun Ji-sung to call her Ju-en from now on, because they would be seeing each other often. Next came the time to collect the results. So Lee Ju-en brought Chun Ji-sung to the company to meet Justin. Chun Ji-sung had never been to such a high-end place before. Only when Lee Ju-en introduced Justin to him did he finally snap back to his senses. Justin had not expected the shaman they hired to be just a kid either. Chun Ji-sung thought he might not be acknowledged because of his age, but Justin did not care about that at all. He simply took out a business card and handed it to Chun Ji-sung. He said he had very high hopes for him. After all, nobody would reject a money printing machine. Lee Ju-en told Justin to stop wasting time and get straight to the point. The next second, Justin slapped his hand down. A box of cash was brought right in front of Chun Ji-sung. The total amount inside was over 500 million won. Chun Ji-sung was instantly in disbelief, so this was his ritual fee. But then he found it strange, because he thought the ritual fee had already been transferred. Lee Ju-en explained that what he received before was only his hourly pay. This was the commission. They earned this money because of him, so he should just take it as his share of the profit. At her words, Chun Ji-sung froze like a statue. Lee Ju-en joked that if he did not want it, he could just give it to her. Chun Ji-sung immediately snatched the case away, because he had never seen this much money in his entire life. In the past, he had to calculate every single expense carefully. Even then, he often fell behind on meal payments, so he truly needed some time to process this. Lee Ju-en told Chun Ji-sung to stay calm, because the company would help him earn even more in the future. Before leaving, Justin reminded Chun Ji-sung not to let anyone poach him. For that, he was willing to pay even more, holding the kind of money he had never touched in his life. Chun Ji-sung had already decided where his first payment should go, so he brought his grandmother to a barbecue restaurant. While they were eating, Chun Ji-sung brought up the nursing home to his grandmother. His grandmother asked, "They won't be like you and only feed me once a day, will they?" Chun Ji-sung didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He quickly explained that with snacks included, she would get 5 meals a day, and he could take her there tomorrow. Since it was not far from home, he could visit her every day, but his grandmother told him not to say things she could not understand. Chun Ji-sung could only promise her seriously that he would give her a better life. Lee Ju-in saw all of this from the side, and she saw even more potential in Chun Ji-sung. Chel-gon also felt that Chun Ji-sung was different from other shamans. He was kind. As for Lee Ju-in, she hoped Chun Ji-sung could go even further, because she had started to feel a strange fondness for this kid. News that Chun Ji-sung had taken down an entire company quickly reached the ears of other shamans, and this man was Lee Tae-ha, the chief shaman of Osun Finance. The next day, Chun Ji-sung brought his grandmother to the nursing home to complete the paperwork. After paying for 2 years of care, he still had 400 million won left. Chun Ji-sung still felt like none of it was real. He had never owned this much money before, so he had no idea where to spend it. Lee Ju-eun asked him what he planned to do with the money, and Chun Ji-sung said he wanted to buy a place to live first. Other than that, he wanted to put the rest in the bank. Lee Ju-eun asked him in return whether it was really appropriate for a kid to deposit that much money all at once. Chun Ji-sung immediately deflated, so Lee Ju-eun decided to teach him how to spend money properly. Chun Ji-sung did not understand. Was there really another way to spend money? He might not know many ways to earn money, but there were plenty of ways to spend it. First came the matter of housing. At first, Chun Ji-sung thought living somewhere that nice by himself was far too luxurious. But Lee Ju-eun scared him by saying that if he was stingy even about a place to rest, he might end up checking into a psychiatric ward one day. Chun Ji-sung definitely did not want to spend the rest of his life in a mental hospital. Next came buying some furniture. After that came ritual tools, so they went to an antique shop. Lee Ju-in brought Chun Ji-sung to meet the shop owner. The owner took one look at the sinister energy around Chun Ji-sung and immediately knew why they had come. Lee Ju-in praised the owner for having sharp eyes, just like always. But the owner told Lee Ju-eun to cut the nonsense and asked for the budget. Lee Ju-eun opened with 100 million won. Chun Ji-sung had not expected a single ritual tool to cost that much. But if he wanted something he could use long-term, it had to be at least that level. Then the owner pulled out a box. Inside was a string of bells shaped like skulls. Chun Ji-sung immediately picked it up and started playing with it. This was his first personal ritual tool. The owner warned Chun Ji-sung not to let it eat him. After leaving the antique shop, Lee Ju-eun asked Chun Ji-sung how much money he had left. At that point, he only had around 15,000 won left. Chun Ji-sung still wanted to save at least a little just in case, but Lee Ju-eun told him there was no return without investment. Lee Ju-eun told Chun Ji-sung not to be so reluctant. Chun Ji-sung had no choice but to agree unwillingly. The next priority was finding an assistant shaman, because the other person would have more experience than a rookie shaman like him. More importantly, when Chun Ji-sung's spiritual power was about to run out, an assistant shaman could step in and carry the ritual forward. The woman in front of him was the Mephisto fairy, Rahun, but she rejected him without the slightest hesitation. Although she had fallen on hard times now, until very recently, she had still been the top disciple of H country's #1 killing curse shaman, and her pride would not allow her to assist a rookie. She also stressed that her business was doing just fine. But Lee Ju-eun exposed her on the spot. Rahun immediately stepped forward and tried to snatch her phone away. Lee Ju-eun instantly offered her a generous salary, then signaled for Chun Ji-sung to pay up. Chun Ji-sung was clearly reluctant, but he still took out several stacks of cash. Lee Ju-eun then smoothly introduced Chun Ji-sung, saying that being the assistant of Yoido's most terrifying shaman was not exactly a bad deal. So in the end, Rahun agreed. Next came the driver and bodyguard. The man in front of them was Choi Dae-ho, the former action captain of the Iron Dragon gang, and as expected, he refused to. Lee Ju-eun once again used the power of money, proving that there really was no problem cash could not solve. Finally came the band, and it was still the same band from last time. The bassist stepped forward and spoke to Chun Ji-sung, saying he believed Chun Ji-sung could bring inspiration to his music. He hoped to work with Chun Ji-sung long-term. Of course, Chun Ji-sung could not have asked for anything better. Back in the car, Lee Ju-eun was still going on and on about all kinds of things he needed to watch out for. Chun Ji-sung sat beside her and thanked her somewhat stiffly. But Lee Ju-eun haughtily said she was only helping him because of money, and business did not need gratitude. For the final stop, Chun Ji-sung went home to pack his things. But the scene before him was impossible to believe, because his home had already become a sea of flames. On the wall, someone had written the words, "Ghost Eyes." Chun Ji-sung knew exactly who had done it, and he had not been able to save a single important thing. Li Juin told Chun Ji-sung to cast another curse. After all, had they not just assembled his team today? So he might as well perform another blade dance. Because the building was old, the house had basically burned to the ground, and even the firefighters could only apologize. Chun Ji-sung could no longer endure it. This time, he was going to end everything for good. 2.5 minutes later, his team arrived at the scene. Li Juin briefly explained the situation. Bullying Chun Ji-sung at school was not enough for them, so they had even come to burn down his home. Everyone wanted to comfort him, but none of them knew what to say. Chun Ji-sung only stared blankly at the ritual tool in his hand. A moment later, he told anyone who could not accept this to leave now. After all, the team's motto was simple. As long as they got paid, it was fine. Ra-hun said the other side was basically begging to die. The bassist also said he would play a true killing song. Once every preparation was complete, this became Chun Ji-sung's first fully prepared ritual. The assistant shaman began chanting the spell first. When the final word fell, Chun Ji-sung immediately began the blade dance. The sound of ringing bells followed. Then the ringing grew faster and faster, finally merging into a killing curse. Meanwhile, Kim Jae-hyun was street racing with his crew. The blonde kid was worried they would be held responsible for burning down the house, but Kim Jae-hyun looked completely unconcerned. After all, there was no politician his father did not know. What the blonde kid was really worried about was whether Kim Jae-hyun would be cursed again. But Kim Jae-hyun only sneered and said that if another part of him got broken, he would kill Chun Ji-sung himself. Nearby, a truck driver muttered that these young street racers clearly had a death wish, but the next second, he suddenly noticed a figure standing in front of his truck. When he finally saw it clearly, his blood ran cold. Because the thing in front of him was not human at all, but a female ghost with empty eyes, the driver panicked and jerked the steering wheel, desperate to escape. But the truck flipped over on the spot, and the entire vehicle came sliding straight toward Kim Jae-hyun and his crew. After a dull crash, the scene was instantly reduced to chaos. Kim Jae-hyun still had no idea what had happened, but his legs were already pinned under the wreckage. He wanted to call his friends over for help, but then his eyes widened in horror, because after all that, it looked like his friends were waiting for him to save them instead. Now, his only hope was the phone lying nearby. Kim Jae-hyun tried to drag his body toward it, but then he realized the motorcycle had crushed his legs in place. Just then, the sound of high heels echoed from nearby. Hearing the footsteps, Kim Jae-hyun immediately cried out for help. But the sound of those heels kept getting closer. In the end, the female ghost had already reached him. At that moment, all Kim Jae-hyun could do was scream, "Don't come any closer." Then, he pulled out a cross for one final struggle, shouting like a madman that he was the son of a pastor. Before he could finish, a ghostly hand lunged at him. It grabbed the cross in one motion. Watching the cross crumble into dust before his eyes, Kim Jae-hyun fell into complete despair. He never thought Chun Ji-sung would be this ruthless. The person who had bullied Chun Ji-sung since elementary school died just like that. Chun Ji-sung felt uneasy, but he did not regret it. He had already made up his mind that he would never let anyone bully him again, so he had to gain wealth and fame. So he called Lee Ju-eun. He needed as much work as possible now. It did not matter which company it was. From then on, Chun Ji-sung and his team kept performing rituals non-stop. They brought down several companies one after another. During that period, Chun Ji-sung and his team became known as the Grim Reapers of Yeouido. Because of that, Chun Ji-sung earned tens of billions in commission. Next came the time to share the rewards, because Chun Ji-sung was no longer working alone. Ra-hun also felt that assisting a rookie shaman was not as unbearable as she had first thought. Choi Dae-ho believed this was much easier than working as a gangster. With this money, the band could even release an official album. Lee Ju-in saw all of this from the side and immediately came over to demand her own share. Chun Ji-sung was confused. Did Lee Ju-in really need money too? But whether rich or poor, nobody ever complains about having too much money. Chun Ji-sung thought she was basically a greedy demon. After all, Lee Ju-in was at least 50 times richer than him. It seemed Chun Ji-sung had not prepared a gift for her. Lee Ju-in angrily turned around to leave. But Chun Ji-sung grabbed her at once. In truth, Chun Ji-sung had prepared a gift. He was not someone who did not know how to be grateful. Then he nervously watched Lee Ju-in's reaction. Unexpectedly, Lee Ju-in liked it a lot. Of course, Uncle Chulgon had a gift too. A pair of sunglasses. Even though Chun Ji-sung had earned so much money, he still had not bought a single new outfit for himself. After that, Lee Ju-en offered to treat everyone to drinks, so the group went to a bar. Lee Ju-in sat down beside Chun Ji-sung, but she did not see anyone else around. It turned out that Ra-hun could not handle her alcohol and had made a huge mess, throwing up in the restroom. Dae-ho had already taken her home. As for the band, they had gone to their rehearsal room for another round. Since Chun Ji-sung had only been drinking soda, he was not drunk at all. Lee Ju-eun happened to have something she wanted to discuss with Chun Ji-sung in private. That immediately sent Chun Ji-sung's imagination running wild, but obviously, this was about work. Realizing his mistake, Chun Ji-sung became flustered, though he did not understand what else there was to discuss. In truth, Chun Ji-sung's performance so far had been outstanding. The problem was that his name had already spread. The financial institutions of Yoido were calling him the sudden death shaman, and they were watching him closely. That meant Chun Ji-sung would likely have to face other shamans soon. Those shamans would try to protect their company's stock prices from the effects of his curses. Or they would try to completely defeat Chun Ji-sung's curse and push the stock price back up by using reverse curses to counter him. That was exactly this man's goal. He was Kim Yoon-suk, the head of strategy at Fibonacci Capital. Golden Cross had shorted the stock their company had been investing in for months, so their company needed Osong Finance's help to fight back against the sudden death shaman. Lee Tae-ha immediately became interested. After all, the one who had crushed several companies in a row was that very sudden death shaman. The shamans of Fibonacci clearly were not enough to handle this situation, so Kim Yoon-suk begged Lee Tae-ha to personally perform a ritual. However, Lee Tae-ha only handled projects above a certain scale, and for something like this, he had no intention of stepping in himself. Still, he would not abandon a company he had worked with so many times, so he decided to lend Fibonacci one of his shamans. Then, Lee Tae-ha called the shaman into the room. The massive figure in front of them was the shaman assigned to this job, and at a glance, he looked like a monk weighing over 300 pounds. He was Gong Young-hwa, the Golden Bodhisattva, 5th seat of Osong Golden Dragon. After that, Gong Young-hwa went to a Chinese restaurant and began eating like a beast. From the way he ate, it looked as if he could never be full. Kim Yoon-suk was completely at a loss beside him, hoping they could start talking business as soon as possible. But the assistant signaled for him not to disturb the bodhisattva while he was eating, and told him to build some good karma. Kim Yoon-suk had no choice but to agree. 2.5 hours later, Gong Young-hwa finally finished eating. Kim Yoon-suk had not expected that before the work even began, this single meal alone would cost him 10 million won. Meanwhile, the monk in front of him was finally satisfied. He began whispering to the assistant beside him. The assistant said they could now start discussing the job. Kim Yoon-suk was overjoyed. He quickly took out his memo. Their prediction was that Golden Cross's short position would expire this Friday, so the other side would most likely cast the curse sometime between today and Thursday night. The Bodhisattva would begin his ritual tonight. Kim Yoon-suk thanked him repeatedly, but the assistant said there was one more condition. During the ritual period, they had to keep providing food like today's meal. In other words, this ritual would require 3 straight days of meals, and without that condition, the ritual could not proceed. Finally, the assistant asked them to find Chun Ji-sung's location, because the Bodhisattva wanted to meet him before the ritual began. On the other side, Chun Ji-sung was sitting in the car. His ritual was scheduled for Thursday, so Lee Ju-en told him to take care of his health. Seeing the troubled look on his face, Lee Ju-en quickly asked if something was wrong. Chun Ji-sung was actually anxious. This was his first time facing another shaman in a ritual battle, and he was afraid he might lose. Lee Ju-en told Chun Ji-sung to calm down. Besides, she had not heard any rumors about the other company preparing a counterattack, so he should not worry about things that had not happened yet. He only needed to focus on staying in his best condition. Just then, Chun Ji-sung arrived at his destination. He started walking toward home, but suddenly, a woman appeared and blocked his path. She said, out of nowhere, that a bodhisattva wanted to meet him, and the location was the underground parking lot. Chun Ji-sung followed the woman to the parking lot, wanting to see what this was about. The woman stepped forward and opened the back of a truck. Gong Young-hwa was sitting inside. Chun Ji-sung had not expected that this round ball of a man in front of him would actually be called a bodhisattva. Gong Young-hwa waved for his assistant to step forward. Then he whispered into the assistant's ear again. Chun Ji-sung still wanted to ask something, but the assistant told him to stay silent, saying the bodhisattva had a message to deliver. First came the introduction. This man was Gong Young-hwa, the Golden Bodhisattva. one of the top 5 shamans on Yoido. He had come to inform Chun Ji-sung exactly who he would be facing this time, just as Lee Ju-en had warned. This was also Chun Ji-sung's first time dealing with something like this, and the assistant told him to give up the job, arrogantly saying Chun Ji-sung was no match for the Bodhisattva at all. After all, the Bodhisattva's experience was far beyond anything Chun Ji-sung could compare to. But since the Bodhisattva was an advocate of peace, he was willing to give Chun Ji-sung one chance to back down. If Chun Ji-sung gave up now, the Bodhisattva would give him some gold as a gift. Before the assistant even finished speaking, Gong Younghwa flung a piece of gold from his belly. The gold flew straight toward Chun Ji-sung. Chun Ji-sung was completely at a loss. Suddenly, a voice rang out and interrupted them. Lee Ju-en had rushed over, out of worry, and immediately asked Chun Ji-sung why he was listening to a pig squeal. In her eyes, Gong Younghwa was obviously afraid of a rookie like Chun Ji-sung. That made Gong Younghwa stand up in fury, and he threatened to let Chun Ji-sung taste what curse transfer felt like. He even declared that Chun Ji-sung was nothing but a parasite feeding on other people's suffering. Chun Ji-sung suddenly fell into self-doubt, because he had never realized that his rituals could also bring pain to ordinary people. But Lee Ju-en burst into laughter from the side. Gong Younghwa clearly had no idea what she was laughing at, acting as if he were some real bodhisattva. In the end, all he did was use rituals to pump up the stock prices of worthless companies and lure retail investors in. Golden Cross, on the other hand, lowered the stock prices of companies with no real value. Which side was darker was already obvious. Gong Younghwa was left speechless. Lee Ju-en told Chun Ji-sung to pull himself together and show that pig who was truly favored by the gods. In the end, Gong Younghwa's group failed to achieve their goal and could only leave in frustration. Before leaving, Gong Younghwa swore that he would make Chun Ji-sung taste the feeling of being abandoned. For this ritual, he would pour in everything he had, even using the same full-scale setup from his younger days. Meanwhile, Lee Ju-en was warning Chun Ji-sung about the safety precautions. But Chun Ji-sung looked lost in thought. Lee Ju-en thought he was simply feeling uneasy. But that was not the answer Chun Ji-sung wanted. He did not care about other people criticizing him. What bothered him was what Gong Younghwa had said before leaving, that word about abandonment. Because Chun Ji-sung had been traumatized in the past, he could not tolerate betrayal at all. His parents had fought constantly when he was little. His father had even been violent at home. In the end, they abandoned him completely, which was why Chun Ji-sung was especially sensitive to anything related to abandonment. Lee Ju-en promised that she would never betray Chun Ji-sung, because he was the best asset she had ever found. Only then did Chun Ji-sung finally calm down a little. He pulled himself together again. Now, he needed to learn the essentials of fighting another shaman, and the first step was gathering his team. To fight another shaman, Chun Ji-sung assembled his team, with Lee Ju-en leading the meeting. First came offense and defense. At its core, this was a direct clash of spiritual power between both sides, an all-out brawl with no holding back, until one side completely gained the upper hand. Both shamans would be going all in, so this was extremely important for Chun Ji-sung. Rahun's side, that Chun Ji-sung's luck was terrible. He had only just entered the field, yet he already had to face another shaman head-on. Chun Ji-sung still did not understand how serious this was. In most cases, the losing shaman would be forced to retire, because the loser could suffer severe internal damage, or even have their bond with the gods forcibly severed. Rahun could not believe Chun Ji-sung did not even know something this basic. Gong Younghwa may have passed his prime, but it had only been 10 years since his peak. In other words, the man Chun Ji-sung was about to face was a former top-tier shaman, and even Chun Ji-sung had not expected his opponent to be this famous. Just then, a pen cap suddenly came flying over and cut their conversation short. Then again, if Lee Ju-en were not confident, she never would have let Chun Ji-sung step into this fight. Besides, sooner or later, Chun Ji-sung was going to have to face something like this. So, no matter what, this was not the time to say anything that would crush his confidence. From the side, Choi Dae-ho raised a question of his own. Did that mean Chun Ji-sung was actually the stronger shaman? Or did they have some kind of strategy that could carry them to victory? In truth, they were all overlooking one thing. Chun Ji-sung was far stronger than any of them realized, and Lee Ju-en had already prepared the perfect strategy. Gong Younghwa would definitely start by building an airtight defensive structure. Once that happened, attacks from every direction would be almost useless against him. But from another angle, that also meant he was digging his own grave. Before long, Thursday night arrived. On Gong Younghwa's side, all preparations were complete. At that moment, he was soaking in a bath, while everything around him had already been arranged like some lavish feast. The time was finally right. Gong Yonghua immediately shouted for the ritual to begin. Everyone around him started moving at once. The monk was crazily devouring raw meat. Suddenly, golden spiritual power began radiating from his body. In the end, that power condensed into a massive golden sphere above the company. Then, with a thunderous boom, it exploded outward. This was Gong Yonghua's defensive curse technique, the Laughing Buddha, said to be an incarnation of Maitreya. Its belly was huge and a brilliant smile was always spread across its face. It also carried a giant sack, using it to hand out food to the hungry. And through its extraordinary foresight, it guided those around it. That was why it was worshipped as a deity in many countries. It was also a symbol of virtue, good fortune, and wealth. From a distance, Li Juan saw the whole thing unfold. Even as the god summoned on the other side was compassionate, that did not mean the shaman summoning it was compassionate too. The moment she said that, the laughing Buddha on the other side began to move. Li Juan instantly saw what it was trying to do. Sure enough, a defensive barrier quickly formed above the company. That made Li Juan sigh that this setup made their side look like the villains summoning some evil god. By now, Chun Ji-sung's side had also finished preparing the ritual. All they were waiting for was Li Juan's command. Li Juan gave the order at once. Begin. Almost at the exact same moment, Chun Ji-sung and the assistant shaman began chanting the spell. The music crashed in right after that. The very next second, dozens of doors suddenly appeared across the sky. Li Juan watched the scene unfold from a distance. And the doors in the sky were already slowly opening. This was the killing curse technique. Purgatory evil ghosts, countless evil spirits rushed toward the laughing Buddha at once. But the next second, the laughing Buddha sliced them in half with a single strike. A whole swarm of evil spirits was instantly blasted into ash. At this, the evil spirits immediately changed formation, but the gap in power showed itself once again. Against this kind of attack, the laughing Buddha had no need to dodge at all. Then, the laughing Buddha scattered a handful of polished rice. The grains instantly pierced through the evil spirits, charging at the front. More attacks kept pouring in from behind. In response, the laughing Buddha simply turned around and used its cloth sack to dissolve them all. For now, Gong Yonghua clearly had the upper hand. Chun Ji-sung was already hovering on the edge of defeat. The laughing Buddha's defense was stronger than expected, and the evil spirits were being burned through far too quickly. Li Juan immediately told Chelgon to make a call. She needed to confirm how much distance was left. Chelgon called right away, and the answer came back. 16 feet left. Li Juan felt that was still too slow, so she told Chun Ji-sung to move faster and strike while the opponent's guard was down. Li Juan believed that with Chun Ji-sung's ability, he could definitely pull it off. Meanwhile, the laughing Buddha had almost wiped out all the evil spirits. That made Gong Yonghua feel that the so-called sudden death shaman was nothing more than an exaggeration. Judging by the current situation, Chun Ji-sung could not possibly be his opponent. As long as this ritual succeeded, Gong Yonghua would be able to reclaim his former position. Kim Yun-suk also showed a look of admiration from the side. Now, Gong Yonghua was ready to push even harder. Even though he had blocked the first wave of attacks, Gong Yonghua did not let his guard down. But suddenly, his expression changed, and he looked up at the sky. Behind the laughing Buddha, a massive door had appeared without anyone noticing. On Chun Ji-sung's side, he had finally finished walking across the 66 feet of blades, and he had not fallen once. Seeing that, Li Juan only smiled faintly. From this moment on, offense and defense were about to reverse. This was Chun Ji-sung's killing curse technique. Guillotine, Great General. Gong Yonghua could not believe Chun Ji-sung had completed 2 rituals in such a short time. But everything had gone exactly as Li Juan predicted. In truth, Chun Ji-sung had not completed 2 rituals back-to-back. From the very beginning, they had been running 2 rituals at the same time. The assistant shaman's purgatory evil ghosts were only there to draw attention. The curse that would secure victory was Chun Ji-sung's own killing curse. At first, even Chun Ji-sung had not known what those 2 rows of blades were. They represented the Hell of Blades. Because the path of blades was absurdly long, almost no shaman would challenge it. But without risk, there would be no reward. Compared with ordinary blades, these blades could raise Chun Ji-sung's mental power by at least 2 to 3 times. At first, Chun Ji-sung refused, because to him, this was simply impossible. But Li Juan grabbed him. She always trusted her own judgment. And Chen Ji-sung really did complete the entire path, which was why he could summon a god who would lead him to victory. The next second, Chen Ji-sung launched his attack without hesitation, and the shockwave from his roar directly shook Gong Yanghua. Han Ju-in still had no idea what was happening. At that moment, the great general had already raised his guillotine blade. Then he swung it down hard at the laughing Buddha, facing the attack right in front of him. Gong Yanghua remembered the reason he absolutely could not lose. He had heard every word of the gossip outside the door. Right now, he was already facing a crisis, and his body carried almost every disease caused by obesity. Even his subordinates were preparing to jump ship. Han Ju-in was furious and wanted to step forward to argue with them, but Gong Yanghua stopped her, because he did not believe arguing would make those people change their minds. He would prove himself with his own ability. If this ritual failed, he would be fired. So, facing the great general's fierce attack, Gong Yanghua had no choice but to brace himself and block it, because he also had a reality where losing was not an option. He immediately ordered Han Ju-in to increase the investment. Han Ju-in could not help worrying about his physical condition, but things had already reached this point, and there was no turning back. So Han Ju-in could only agree. By now, the battle had reached a fever pitch. But as far as Li Ju-in knew, Gong Yanghua should not have been able to last this long. It seemed that if they wanted to end this fight, they had to merge the two rituals. Meanwhile, Choi Dae-ho immediately passed this message to Chen Ji-sung. At this point, Chen Ji-sung was already running out of strength. Even so, he launched another attack without hesitation. Choi Dae-ho watched from the side, worried about Chen Ji-sung's condition. But no matter what, Chen Ji-sung had to keep moving forward. He could not stop, because he had teammates with him now. They had all given so much for this ritual, so now it was time to merge the two ceremonies. Chen Ji-sung picked up his ritual tool again. The assistant shaman began chanting first. Then the music started. Finally, Chen Ji-sung stepped onto the blades once more. In that instant, a powerful force erupted from within him again. Gong Yanghua's side was the same, and the two sides clashed head-on once more. Now, this battle had become a pure contest of mental power, and it was time to show the other side who was truly favored by the gods. On Gong Yanghua's side, his assistant shamans had completely run out of steam. Now he could no longer defeat Chen Ji-sung, and his only chance was to hold out until dawn. On one side stood the supernova, known as the Sudden Death Shaman. On the other stood an industry giant, known as the Golden Bodhisattva. One was fighting to seize his future, while the other was fighting to reclaim his past glory. Now, the moment of victory and defeat had finally arrived. As the sun climbed over the horizon, morning had come. Noticing the dawn, Han Ju-in immediately turned back, ready to notify the Bodhisattva. But by then, Gong Yanghua's whole body was already trembling. The next second, he collapsed headfirst. He passed out on the spot. The laughing Buddha he had summoned also began to fade away. Then, the great general raised both blades. 2 slashes of blade energy swept out and completely ended the ritual battle. Li Tae-ha also witnessed everything from not far away. Gong Yanghua, struck by the backlash, fainted on the spot. Horrified, Han Ju-in rushed forward and tried to drag him out. It took all her strength to finally pull him out of the bath. Then, she immediately began emergency treatment. Han Ju-in knew exactly how everyone talked about Gong Yanghua. Washed up, fat pig, whatever they called him, she did not care. Her loyalty to Gong Yanghua had a reason. It all went back to 3 years ago, when she first met him. Back then, Gong Yanghua was not as obese as he was now, but his appetite was already enormous. Han Ju-in was the one in charge of cleaning up after him. She would always find the place in a complete mess. It nearly broke her down. She had thought that becoming a secretary at Osan Finance would make her life better, but instead, her job turned out to be cleaning up trash for some cult-like pig. The next day, Han Ju-in came to deliver documents to Gong Yanghua. Gong Yanghua suddenly asked for her name. Then he asked whether she knew someone in her family was sick, but with Han Ju-in buried in work, how could she possibly know that? Gong Yanghua told Han Ju-in to take her family for a checkup. Han Ju-in only found it strange, but in the end, she was shaken and called her mother. Unfortunately, her mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Fortunately, it had been found early, and there was still a chance to save her. Han Ju-in told her mother not to worry about money, and to leave everything to her. But her mother refused treatment. Because she did not want her only family to ruin her own life because of her, she felt she had already lived long enough. Han Juin had grown up by then. Ever since she was little, her mother had always gone along with what she wanted, but this time, her mother had made her own decision. At that moment, Han Juin felt a deep sense of helplessness, but Gong Yunghwa's words had shone into her life like a beam of light. He would pay all the medical bills and let Han Juin take time off until her mother got better. Han Juin wanted to ask why, but Gong Yunghwa only said that maybe helping the people around him could satisfy the hunger inside him that could never truly be filled, so he hoped she would not mind receiving help from a selfish cult pig. That was the reason Han Juin was now desperately performing emergency treatment. But Gong Yunghwa still showed no response. All she could do was beat against him helplessly. She could not understand why Gong Yunghwa could not save himself, or why he had to collapse in such a miserable way. She could not accept any of this. Just then, Gong Yunghwa finally showed a reaction. Meanwhile, everything had settled, and now it was time to wrap things up. Li Juin stepped forward and bandaged Chon Ji-sung's wounds. Chon Ji-sung felt that a little ointment would have been enough. But Li Juin knew he had already given everything he had. Chon Ji-sung had performed very well this time, and that was exactly what he wanted to hear. However, there was one more thing. Because Chon Ji-sung had won this counterattack, he was about to become a star shaman. Li Juin seemed to guess what Chen Ji-sung was thinking. She told him not to get any ridiculous ideas. Chen Ji-sung defensively protested that he was not thinking anything. What Li Juin meant was that Chen Ji-sung now had both fans and haters. Since Chen Ji-sung had defeated one of Osung Finance's top 5 seats, many financial institutions would come looking for him. Those were his fans. On the other hand, financial institutions closely tied to Osung Finance, along with shamans afraid of losing their jobs, would become his haters. Chen Ji-sung was happy that someone would support him, and he thought that was a good thing. Before he could finish, Li Juin flicked him on the forehead. Because sometimes, fans were even scarier than haters. As expected, Chen Ji-sung's ritual had been far too effective this time. He was bound to draw attention. The man in front of them was Ma Young-sung, the CEO of Hoan Investment, and the man beside him was Hoan Investment's shaman, Sargat. There was a reason Chen Ji-sung had drawn this much attention. In the history of Yoido, the only shaman who had ever defeated a top-tier shaman while still a rookie was Yi Taeha. If they could recruit Chen Ji-sung, they would have a chance to monopolize every cursed shaman business on Yoido. That immediately caught Ma Young-sung's interest. No matter what method he had to use, he was going to poach Chen Ji-sung. Meanwhile, Chen Ji-sung was working out with Li Juin at the gym. The workout nearly exhausted him. Li Juin, however, looked completely relaxed, because this training was meant to stop Chen Ji-sung from fainting again during rituals. Up to this point, Chen Ji-sung had been holding himself together, almost entirely through willpower. But if something unexpected happened in the middle of a ritual, the whole game would be over. At that, Chen Ji-sung no longer dared to complain. But there was one more thing. Li Juin ordered Chen Ji-sung to live with Choi Dae-ho from now on. Chen Ji-sung thought it would only be for a few days. But Li Ju-eun's answer was that there was no time to waste. Chen Ji-sung did not quite understand. Li Juin told Chen Ji-sung to think carefully about how Gong Yunghwa had found him last time. After all, Chen Ji-sung had won the counterattack battle. That made him famous, which also meant people could come looking for him at any time, so someone needed to protect him around the clock. So what was Chen Ji-sung's answer? Since Li Juin clearly would not accept a no, of course, he had to accept. The next day, Choi Dae-ho arrived at Chen Ji-sung's place with his luggage. Then he asked where his room was. Chen Ji-sung had left him the innermost room. Dae-ho looked around with a sharp, assessing gaze. That made Chen Ji-sung suddenly feel a little uncomfortable. He started worrying whether he could really get along with this former gang member. But he would soon realize that this worry was completely meaningless. Early the next morning, Chen Ji-sung heard noise coming from the kitchen. Dae-ho had already prepared a full breakfast. Chen Ji-sung took one bite. Then he realized the breakfast did not just look good, it tasted great too. On top of that, this former gang member even knew how to clean. The bathroom was quickly made spotless. On the way to work, he even prepared snacks for Chen Ji-sung. And when Chen Ji-sung came home exhausted after a full day of work, Dae-ho would invite him to drink a cup of tea and relax. Looking at the tea in his hand, Chen Ji-sung finally asked the question on his mind. Had Dae-ho always been good at housework? Dae-ho thought he had become a burden to Chen Ji-sung. But Chen Ji-sung was simply curious. The truth was, all of this was because Dae-ho had a daughter. Chen Ji-sung could hardly believe that Dae-ho had actually been married. That immediately made Daeho a little annoyed. While Chun Ji-sun was only thinking that if Daeho had been married, should he not return to his family? Daeho answered that it was because he was already divorced. His daughter had been placed with her mother, and the reason he was working so hard to earn money now was to fight for custody. His relationship with his daughter was better than his ex-wife's, but because he had a criminal record, he could not win custody. Still, if he could show better financial conditions, the court might review the case again. Chun Ji-sun now felt that Daeho was clearly a good father, completely different from the father who had ignored him his entire life. Daeho did not know how to comfort him for a moment, so he could only tell Chun Ji-sun to finish his tea and go to sleep. But just as Chun Ji-sun was about to head to bed, Daeho still spoke up to comfort him. That gave Chun Ji-sun a kind of warmth he had never felt before. After another busy day came to an end, Daeho prepared hot tea for Chun Ji-sun again. Just then, Daeho's daughter called. He first asked for Chun Ji-sun's permission, then answered the call. On the phone, Daeho's daughter sounded like she was in bad shape. She had been living alone for 3 straight days because her mother had not come home for 3 days. That instantly made Daeho furious. Seeing his rage, Chun Ji-sun grabbed his arm. Chun Ji-sun said they could go pick up Daeho's daughter and bring her to his place first. Just as they were about to drive over, a blinding light suddenly flashed ahead of them. A group of cars surrounded them from every side. Before the two of them could even understand what was going on, Sargit got out of one of the cars. Along with him came a group of his lackeys. Chun Ji-sun immediately looked a little panicked. Sargut said he only wanted to talk to Chun Ji-sun. Daeho told Chun Ji-sun not to get out of the car, no matter what. Seeing that Chun Ji-sun still refused to come out, Sargut immediately decided to play dirty. He turned around and gave an order to the white-haired thug. The white-haired thug let out a sharp whistle. A crowd of thugs climbed out of the cars one after another. Clearly, they were ready to use violence. Chun Ji-sun had only ever seen this many gangsters in movies, but now the movie had crashed straight into reality. His first thought was to call the police, but Daeho immediately rejected that idea because the police would never arrive in time. Besides, Daeho himself might end up getting tangled in trouble, so it was better to call Juin and have Uncle Chulgan come over. Then, Daeho warned Chun Ji-sun that no matter what happened, he must not get out of the car. Chun Ji-sun still had no idea what Daeho was about to do. The next second, he saw Daeho pull out a gun. One of the thugs was still pounding wildly on the car window. Daeho rolled down the window and first pointed the gun straight at him. Then he cursed out the thug's entire family tree. That instantly left the thug frozen in place. Sargut had expected Chun Ji-sun to maybe hire some strong bodyguard, but each country was supposed to be a country where guns were banned. The white-haired thug immediately figured out that the gun was probably an air gun. At his words, the thugs immediately rushed toward Daeho. Daeho pulled the trigger without hesitation. A burst of red smoke exploded out. Several thugs instantly lost their ability to fight. Right after that, Daeho started searching through the car. Once he found his baton, he told Chun Ji-sun to repeat what he had just said. First, call Juin. Second, do not get out of the car, no matter what. Chun Ji-sun then apologized to Daeho, saying he was sorry they had been targeted because of him. After all, they were supposed to be going to pick up Daeho's daughter. But Daeho told Chun Ji-sun not to worry. He would fulfill his duties both as a father and as an employee. By then, the thugs outside had already gotten back up and were yelling for the people inside the car to come out. The next second, one of them was sent flying by the car door. Daeho kicked the door open. This time, he stepped out wearing a gas mask. The white-haired thug immediately ordered his men to grab Daeho because he believed Daeho could not fire at close range. But then, the white-haired thug froze. He had not expected Daeho to have a gas mask. That meant this man often fought using a pepper spray gun, and there was only one person who did that. The white-haired thug finally remembered. This guy was the action captain of the Iron Dragon gang. And now, Daeho's baton was already right in front of him. Reacting instinctively, the white-haired thug immediately drew a dagger to block. That made Daeho think this guy was actually pretty sharp. The white-haired thug had also come from a gang background, and although Daeho was famous, right now, Daeho had to face 32 enemies alone. Sargut did not want to create unnecessary casualties. Their target had only ever been Chun Ji-sun. So as long as Daeho handed over Chun Ji-sun, everyone could walk away safely. But Daeho refused outright. He was willing to do anything for money, even if that meant facing 32 enemies alone. One of the thugs he had knocked down earlier got back up. The thug grabbed his steel pipe and swung it straight at him. But Daeho simply sidestepped and dodged it. Then he struck back, landing a clean hit on the thug's jaw. Looking at the thugs charging toward him, Daeho fired another shot. Then he rushed straight into the crowd and started swinging his baton. Meanwhile, Chun Ji-sung had already made the call. Over the phone, Lee Ju-in was shocked as well. Meanwhile, Daeho dodged another incoming attack. Then he fired a shot of pepper spray straight into the attacker's face. But the blonde thug who had been knocked down earlier suddenly pulled out a knife and stabbed toward Daeho. At the same time, Daeho was struck hard in the back of the head. With the hit landing, the blonde thug immediately got cocky. But the next second, Daeho kicked him flying. Another thug tried to sneak attack Daeho from the side, only to be dropped by another blast of pepper spray. The white-haired thug could not understand why Daeho was going this far. Sargut was already urging him to end this quickly. The white-haired thug felt that he and Daeho were basically the same, both working for privileged bastards who knew nothing about loyalty or honor. But he still could not understand why this man was fighting so desperately. Then he sighed that maybe he and Daeho should never have left the gangs. At least there, loyalty still meant something. After fighting for 2.5 hours, Daeho finally collapsed. 32 people were still too many, even though he had already taken down most of them. The white-haired thug told Daeho to hand over the key, or he would kill him. Daeho only mocked them, saying a bunch of grown adults were really shameless enough to kidnap a kid. Just then, one of the thugs snatched the knife away. Then he stabbed fiercely toward Daeho. Looks like this guy really did not know when to quit. Daeho often wondered what the meaning of his life really was. He had collected debts for the gang. He had fought in gang wars. He had even assassinated the boss of a rival gang. But in the end, he had been forced to take the blame for the gang boss's son. Looking at the knife right in front of him, the only thing he worried about in his final moment was that no one would be there to take care of his daughter. But now, all he could do was calmly face death. However, the knife did not fall the way he expected. Chun Ji-sung had blocked the stab with his own hand. Daeho could not understand why Chun Ji-sung would do that. Everyone at the scene froze as well. Chun Ji-sung said he would go with them. But the blonde thug clearly had no intention of stopping. Suddenly, a strike came flying in and smashed straight into his face. The one who attacked was Sargut. After all, Chun Ji-sung was a shaman who might become Hoon's greatest asset. It would be bad if some thug ended up crippling him. But the white-haired thug immediately stopped Sargut. Since the other underlings were still watching, they could not let the situation get too ugly. Although Sargut stopped, he still said he would hold them responsible for this later. Then he walked up to Chun Ji-sung and introduced himself. He also explained why he had come. Chun Ji-sung's only condition was that they stop hurting Daeho. After that, he got into the car with them. Daeho was carried away with them as well. Sargut told Chun Ji-sung not to worry. Even though he had left a bad first impression, they would be working together from now on. Chun Ji-sung felt that Sargut was seriously looking down on him. No one would want to team up with someone who had just hurt them. Sargut tried to explain further, but Chun Ji-sung refused to listen. That immediately irritated Sargut. Hoon was a group built on gang foundations to begin with. If Chun Ji-sung refused to cooperate, Hoon would not mind making him disappear. So he had better stop showing that disgust on his face and obediently follow him to meet the chairman. Just then, the car suddenly stopped. At some point, the entrance to the parking lot had been blocked, and they were clearly in a hurry. The white-haired thug immediately ordered one of his men to open the gate. But 2.5 minutes later, a sound came from behind them. When the two of them saw who had arrived, they were both stunned. The one who had come was Uncle Chilgon. Judging by the situation, the underlings had probably all been knocked out by him. Only then did the white-haired thug recognize him. This man was Kang Chulgon, but the blonde thug had already stepped forward to provoke him. By the time the white-haired thug tried to stop him, it was too late. At this, the white-haired thug took something out, but Chulgon ignored him completely. He only coldly asked where Chun Ji-sung was. Judging by the other side's attitude, he probably was not getting an answer. The next second, the blonde thug lunged at him with a knife, but Uncle Chulgon still knocked him unconscious with one punch. The other thugs went down with him. In a panic, Sargut tried to call for backup, but Chulgon had already arrived right in front of him. This nearly scared Sargut stiff. Chulgon urged Sargut to open the car door, but judging from his reaction, he clearly had no intention of cooperating. In that case, some necessary measures would have to be taken. The next second, Chulgon shattered the car window with one punch. Cholgon told Chun Ji-sung that he was safe now. But Chun Ji-sung looked troubled, because Sargot had already fainted from fear, and had even wet his pants. In the end, Chun Ji-sung still got out of the car. Uncle Cholgon noticed the wound on his hand. But compared with that, getting Daeho to the hospital came first. After all, Daeho looked like he was in bad shape. At the hospital, Chun Ji-sung looked extremely anxious, worried that something might happen to Daeho. Lee Ju-eun comforted him, saying the surgery would not be life-threatening, but recovery would take a long time. Still, aside from that, they needed to think about how to strike back at Hoan, that gang-backed company. Chun Ji-sung thought Uncle Cholgon beating them up earlier should have been enough. But Lee Ju-eun said that if they left a hornet's nest like Hoan alone, more trouble would keep coming. Besides, they now held a useful card in their hands. Tonight, they would use that guy to arrange a meeting with Hoan. Chun Ji-sung asked if he had to go too. Lee Ju-eun said, of course. All the people involved had to be there. Did he have somewhere else to be? As it turned out, Chun Ji-sung really did need to deliver food to someone. So Chun Ji-sung and Cholgon went to the home of Daeho's daughter, Susie. Chun Ji-sung introduced himself as Daeho's co-worker and said he was there to take Susie out for a meal. After that, they went to a restaurant together. Meanwhile, Lee Ju-eun was pointing a gun at Sargot, because her most important asset had nearly been lost because of him. Sargot quickly said he had never intended to kill anyone. Lee Ju-eun told him to shut up, or she would roast him alive. After dinner, Chun Ji-sung brought Susie back home. The first thing Susie saw was a photo of herself with her father. Then, she asked Chun Ji-sung when her dad would come back. Chun Ji-sung could only lie and say that Daeho was busy with work. Until then, Chun Ji-sung told Susie to treat this place like her own home and said he would leave her a phone number. Susie knew Chun Ji-sung was about to go out, so she asked where he was going. Chun Ji-sung was momentarily at a loss for words. In the end, he could only say that he was going to talk to the people who had made Daeho so busy, because there was something important he had to do now. After that, Chun Ji-sung and the others arrived at Hoan Group. Justin asked lazily whether he really had to come in person. Lee Ju-eun said the boss on the other side had shown up too. Justin sighed that they really were a bunch of thugs. Lee Ju-eun was a little worried. Was it really okay for Justin to come without any bodyguards? Justin looked completely unconcerned. No matter what the other side did, they could only use things like kitchen knives anyway. He, on the other hand, had a gun. Chun Ji-sung thought it was another air gun, but Justin said this one was real. After hearing that Chun Ji-sung had been attacked, Justin told him he had been through a lot. Chun Ji-sung said he was fine, and only asked Justin to take extra care of Daeho. That left Justin a little speechless. He told Chun Ji-sung that sometimes he should let Lee Ju-eun teach him how to care about himself. Lee Ju-eun said she had no interest in dealing with that. Before they knew it, they were almost there. In that case, it was time to get to work. Ma Young-sung had already been waiting inside for quite a while. Chun Ji-sung and the others then walked in. At that moment, Chun Ji-sung looked a little timid. After all, this was his first time meeting a real gang boss like this. Lee Ju-eun noticed how nervous Chun Ji-sung looked and grabbed him at once. She told him to watch carefully and learn how Justin handled a situation like this. The two men started with a contest of grip strength. Ma Young-sung mocked Justin, asking whether Golden Cross was so desperate that it had to rely on a shaman just to stay alive. Justin did not back down either, and shot back that it did not seem to be any of his business. Ma Young-sung acknowledged Justin's nerve, then said he had something good to offer. He wanted Justin to sell Chun Ji-sung to him. For that, he was willing to pay 28 billion won. He would settle it with stocks and bonds. After all, Golden Cross could just find another shaman. Ma Young-sung thought this was a pretty generous proposal, but Justin told him to shut up and said his mouth stank. At his words, everyone in the room was shocked. Ma Young-sung had not even reacted yet. Justin continued, saying he had already heard enough of Ma Young-sung's story, so now it was time to hear his. He wanted Ma Young-sung to understand how a man with no connections on Yoido had climbed all the way to this position. Then, Justin warned Ma Young-sung that if he dared to touch Chun Ji-sung, he was welcome to try. After that, he shook Ma Young-sung's hand off. He added that people should learn in high school not to covet what belonged to others, unless Ma Young-sung had never gone to high school at all. Either way, he should stop eyeing someone else's property. They had not come here today to do business with him. They had come to return his dog. With that, Justin turned to leave. One of the underlings saw someone daring to talk to his boss like that. He immediately tried to step forward and teach Justin a lesson. But the next second, he calmed down real fast, because the thing in Justin's hand was definitely not a joke. Then they chose to leave. After all, divine power alone was not enough to survive on Yeouido. Lee Ju-eun told Chun Ji-sung to remember the presence his employer had shown just now. Chun Ji-sung nodded, though he felt that kind of nerve was probably the only thing worth learning. Justin said that if Lee Ju-eun quit smoking, he would quit women. Lee Ju-eun immediately rolled her eyes at him. Just then, Ma Young-sun suddenly threw a pull cue at them, but Chelgon blocked it. Ma Young-sun coldly asked where these people had learned their manners, leaving on their own like that. Justin fired back, asking if it was not from the same school that had taught Ma Young-sun manners. Ma Young-sun grew furious and said that if they handed over the sudden death shaman, he would let Justin keep barely surviving on Yeouido. Lee Ju-eun told him there should be a limit to playing dirty. Was he really trying to threaten them with violence? But Ma Young-sun said that if they refused his demand, he would sabotage every single ritual Golden Cross performed. At his threat, Lee Ju-eun was shocked. Chun Ji-sung had not expected anyone to be this shameless. Ma Young-sun swore he would use every method possible to interrupt their rituals until Golden Cross went bankrupt. After all, public authorities would not protect ritual work. In other words, if Justin did not hand over the sudden death shaman, Ma Young-sun would bring Golden Cross down. But Justin told him to go ahead and try. In the end, no one knew who would live and who would die. This time, they really turned and left. Ma Young-sun now demanded an explanation from Sargut. Sargut stammered that there was a reason he had failed. But Ma Young-sun clearly did not accept that answer. Right now, he only wanted to vent his anger first. After teaching Sargut a lesson, Ma Young-sun said he would give Sargut one final chance. If he failed again, it would not end with just a beating. Now, Golden Cross had completely torn ties with Hoan, so the three of them held a small meeting. Lee Ju-eun felt that declaring war directly was a little reckless, but after thinking it through, it did make sense. After all, Hoan was a massive company with several times more capital than Golden Cross. This situation was basically David facing Goliath, but there was no need to worry, because that also meant if they found the right weakness, they could destroy Hoan in one strike, and their entry point would be Hoan's largest subsidiary. So, the target of this ritual would be Hoan Construction. As long as they succeeded, they could bring Hoan down in one move. First, they needed approval from the board. Justin clearly stated that they were going after Hoan Construction this time. Among all of Hoan's subsidiaries, Hoan Construction held the largest share. If they took down Hoan Construction, the entire Hoan investment might never be able to rise again. Now, it was time for questions. One board member spoke first, asking whether the company even had any extra cash available right now. Justin calmly said that starting tomorrow, they would sell off all of the company's high-quality assets for cash, which would add up to about 120 billion won. The moment he said that, the board members erupted in an uproar, because if this short-selling operation failed, the company would be facing bankruptcy. But how could Justin possibly not know that? The board member then asked why he still wanted to do this. Justin answered that it was because the other side had dared to covet what belonged to someone else and had already declared war on them. This was a battle where they had to stake everything. Either the enemy died or Golden Cross survived. So for the growth of Golden Cross, he asked them to support his decision. Lee Ju-eun waited anxiously outside. When she saw Justin come out, she hurried over to meet him. Justin said excitedly that the board had approved the use of the funds. This would be the largest short-selling operation in Golden Cross history, and his role ended here. Next, it was Chen Ji-sung's turn to perform. Chun Ji-sung would give it everything he had to avenge brother Daeho, who was lying in the hospital. Meanwhile, Ma Young-sun's side also began discussing their strategy. Soon, problems started appearing on Chun Ji-sung's side. Hoan bribed the security staff and smashed up their ritual hall, and the thugs who were detained all looked completely unconcerned, as if they had expected this from the start. Not only that, even the truck transporting their materials was hijacked. The helpers they had signed contracts with started resigning. Even the band was threatened. Nothing too serious had happened yet. But at this rate, things clearly could not go on like this. Rahian could not help but sigh. Lee Ju-eun immediately stepped forward and flicked her on the forehead. Rahan instantly got upset, but Li Juan calmly said that the two of them only needed to think about how to perform the ritual. At that moment, Chon Ji-sung brought up an idea. If they could not perform the ritual on the island, could they do it off the island instead? Technically, they could, but the target company was on the island, and the farther they were from the target, the weaker the divine power would become. Was the answer not obvious? The deep sense of helplessness washed over Chon Ji-sung, as if he had returned to that time in his life again. This was clearly a war to protect himself, and a war that staked the fate of the company. Yet right now, he could not help at all. But Rahun's next words suddenly gave Chon Ji-sung an idea. Could they not perform the ritual while moving? That gave Chon Ji-sung a bold thought. He suggested performing the ritual inside a vehicle. Rahun thought that was impossible. Li Juan said they could set up a small ritual hall inside a truck. Chon Ji-sung said he wanted to try. For everyone's sake, he was willing to give it a shot. Very soon, they set up a small ritual hall inside the truck. Watching them, Li Juan could not help but sigh that this really was one moving little ritual. Meanwhile, Hoen's side had already received the news. Golden Cross's short position would expire on Friday, and over the next 3 days, Han Construction stock was still holding strong. Although the 120 billion won short had slowed the momentum a little. Once the news got out, plenty of retail investors began buying in alongside Hoan. As a result, the stock did not fall at all. Instead, it climbed another 5%. Ma Young-sung only said calmly that in 3 days, they would probably get to watch that little company collapse. Then he asked if Golden Cross had made any moves. His subordinate replied that the other side seemed to have completely given up trying to perform rituals on Yoido. Even the people sent to tail them had not found anything unusual. But Sardut chimed in, warning that it was not impossible for Golden Cross to perform the ritual off Yoido. Even though the effect would be much weaker than casting it on the island, they should still prepare a blessing ritual to protect the stock price, just in case. Persuaded, Ma Young-sun approved the idea. Sargut immediately said he would get everything ready at once. But Ma Young-sun told him not to celebrate too early. After this poaching fiasco, he no longer trusted Sargut. So this time, the support ritual would be led by Bai Yan, while Sargut would assist her instead. On top of that, Ma Young-sun coldly added that if Sargut failed again, he should already know what the consequences would be. Suppressed and humiliated by Ma Young-sun, Sargut felt utterly miserable. Just then, a woman dressed in white ritual robes walked in. She was Hoan's blessing ritual shaman, Bai Yan. Hoan had always made its profits through killing curses. That was why the person who had truly held real power until now had always been Sargut, the shaman in charge of those killing curses. But Bai Yan clearly intended to use this opportunity to overturn that balance. Then, wearing a sly smile, she greeted Sargut first. Sargut, however, said with a serious face that this was no time to fool around, and that they needed to focus on the ritual. If they failed this time, both of them were finished. But Bai Yan was brimming with confidence. She declared that the odds of her island-based blessing ritual losing to an off-island killing curse were 0. Then, she stepped forward and picked up a dagger. After that, she unfolded the fan in her hand. Beside her, Sargut began playing the reverse zither. Moving with the rhythm, Bai Yan began her fan dance. The next second, a massive gate suddenly appeared in front of the company. Right after that, a white serpent shot out from within the gate. This was the spirit of the blessing ritual, the white porcelain serpent dragon. By coiling itself around the company, it formed a defensive barrier over the target. Meanwhile, Li Juan was watching all of this from a distance. For this battle, Hoan had mobilized virtually every resource it could. Just then, Li Juan's phone rang. Director Kim called to say that everything was ready, and they could begin at any time. Chong Ji-sung fixed his body in place with 2 steel cables to keep his balance. Suddenly, he noticed Rahun struggling to climb onto the truck platform. She had come to bring Chong Ji-sung the ritual earphones. Once the ritual began, the music would be transmitted through the earphones, and he must not take them off during the ceremony. Rahun apologized. As his assistant shaman, she could not stand in a ritual hall with Chen Ji-sung this time. Chong Ji-sung understood that it was because there was not enough space. Before they began, the two of them bumped fists. This was to successfully avenge Daeho. The truck door slowly closed. Lee Ju-eun then gave the order, and 2 cars immediately followed the truck to escort it. Chun Ji-sung felt a vibration under his feet. He understood that the ritual had begun. The assistant shaman's chant came through his earphones. As the final word fell, the band's rock music blasted in as well. Chun Ji-sung immediately began the blade dance. Li Juan was watching everything through the monitor. Although it was theoretically possible, she honestly was not certain either. All she could do was pray that Chen Jisung's talent would make the impossible possible. Meanwhile, Bai Yan decided to pour herself completely into the ritual. Her eyes suddenly widened. Through those eyes, she was able to control the white porcelain serpent dragon, and she fused her consciousness with it as one. So what exactly would Chen Jisung bring out? Suddenly, a black sphere flew out from the gate. Bai Yan froze when she saw it. Was that really all? She could not help laughing. The great sudden death shaman's killing curse was nothing more than a soap bubble. Sargat warned her not to let her guard down. Did she want to interrupt the flow of divine power? If they really were performing the ritual off the island, then Hoenn currently held the high ground. But looking ordinary on the outside did not mean it was weak. The black sphere suddenly began to deform. Then, a black spike shot straight toward the white porcelain serpent dragon. However, judging by the result, it did not seem very effective. Watching this, Bai Yan could no longer hold back. She could not believe her senior had been humiliated by something like this. That instantly made Sargat feel both ashamed and furious. But their mission was only to stop the killing curse. Judging by the situation, it really did seem simple, so they should end this quickly. Before she even finished speaking, the white porcelain serpent dragon charged straight at the black sphere. But the black sphere dodged in an instant. Bai Yan was startled. Could it be an agility type? The white porcelain serpent dragon attacked 3 times in a row, but every strike missed. A large white porcelain serpent consumed a relatively huge amount of divine power, so she had to change how she controlled it. Bai Yan immediately made the serpent coil itself again to gather power. Meanwhile, the black sphere in the distance began changing shape once more. It burst into the form of an insect. Could it be a plague god? But that no longer mattered. Bai Yan immediately ordered her assistant to bring chicken blood. First, she soaked the dagger in the chicken blood. Then, she swallowed the dagger whole. What Bai Yan wanted to do was increase the completeness of the ritual. After all, the white porcelain serpent dragon was a spiritual creature specialized in defense. The best method was to increase the amount of divine power supplied to it. At the same time, the killing curse in the sky changed shape again. In the end, it morphed into the form of a salamander. Though the difference in size between the two sides was still huge. Sargat also noticed that something was wrong with Bai Yan. He suddenly looked up. He immediately saw the gap in divine power. Chen Jisung's killing curse was not only changing in appearance, its divine power was also growing. Generally speaking, divine power was similar to mental power. Its transmission speed was tied to distance. Divine power this enormous should not have been able to travel from outside the island to inside the island so quickly. Sargat could barely believe his own guess, but he still decided to verify it. Instead of trying to explain away the impossible, he needed to figure out how they had made the impossible possible. He immediately called Ma Yong-sung. The sudden death shaman seemed to be entering the island while performing the ritual. As long as they found him, victory would belong to Hoenn. Ma Yong-sung immediately ordered all manpower to be placed under Sargat's command. They were to begin searching around Mapo Bridge at once. Aside from the sudden death shaman, it did not matter if everyone else was killed. Let them taste the ruthlessness of the Great Empire faction. The pursuers soon arrived at Mapo Bridge. They had already spotted the truck carrying out the ritual and had set up a blockade ahead. Pursuers were closing in from behind as well, so Cholgon suggested getting out first to clear out a group of them. But Director Kim said there was no need for that. How could a sedan possibly stop a truck? With that, he floored the accelerator and drove the truck straight into them. The sight left the thugs in utter disbelief. To stay alive, they had no choice but to scatter. The truck successfully broke through the first blockade. Sargat had not expected them to break through even that, so he immediately changed tactics and decided to use brute force to board the truck. One thug tried to jump onto the vehicle. Just then, the car behind him gave him a brutal push. As expected, he was knocked out on the spot. A few other thugs had already climbed onto the truck, but Director Kim looked strangely calm. Then, he splashed a cup of hot tea straight at one of them. The thug went plummeting straight to the pavement. Meanwhile, Bai Yan was also starting to run out of strength. Chen Jisung's killing curse kept changing form, and its power was growing stronger and stronger. Now, it was no longer just dodging. It had even started fighting back. If the killing curse changed forms a few more times, it would be over. On Chen Jisung's side, he kept pushing the rhythm faster. He could feel that the ritual was almost complete. Just a little more, and so far everything was still going smoothly. But at that moment, another truck suddenly cut in front of them. Director Kim saw it and quickly jerked the steering wheel. Chen Ji-sung was just about to complete the ritual, but his body suddenly lost balance. Because of the sharp turn, the truck began to tilt. In the end, it flipped over on the spot. The scene instantly turned into a wreck. Director Kim passed out on the spot. Chen Ji-sung's ankle and hand were both severely fractured. Cheol-gon also collapsed to the ground, unable to move. When Lee Ju-in heard about the crash, she panicked for a moment. She immediately ordered them to check on the shaman first. Shockingly, Cheol-gon actually stood back up. The situation was terrible now. Hoen's people would probably swarm the place any second. Cheol-gon immediately walked to the truck door. Then he grabbed the jammed door and pulled with all his strength. Somehow, he tore the entire thing off by force. Chen Ji-sung was in terrible condition. Even worse, Hoen's men had already arrived. John Ji-sung's killing curse was also slowly fading away. This was the worst possible situation, and it seemed like everything was already settled. But right then, Chen Ji-sung regained consciousness. He looked at the fight outside. Then he looked at his fractured fingers. He could not summon any strength at all, and it felt like he had just woken up from a dream. In that dream, he had received attention he had never received before, lived in a place he had never lived in, tried food he had never tasted, and gained a life he had never been able to give himself. He had even gained a group of companions he truly treasured. Chen Ji-sung did not want to wake up like this. He wanted to keep dreaming, but now he had no idea what he could even do. Another Chen Ji-sung spoke inside his heart, telling him to do everything he could. As if realizing something, he slowly crawled back up, because the only thing he could do now was continue the ritual. Chen Ji-sung used every bit of strength he had to lift the altar table back up. Stunned, everyone who had been fighting stopped. Was this badly injured guy seriously trying to continue the ritual? Then, Chen Ji-sung raised his ritual tool, ready to pour everything he had into one more blade dance. This was a killing curse created mainly from divine power, with resentment as its support. Its method of attack was to transform into the thing each person feared most. Once hit, the target would be swallowed by fear instantly. Yet not long ago, this boy had just been in a crash, and blood was still seeping from his scalp, blocking his vision. The twisted pain in his fingers and ankle crawled through his nerves. There was the headache from his concussion, and the shattered debris scattered all over the truck. There was the chaotic brawl between thugs and bodyguards, and the incomprehension in everyone's eyes. In the middle of all this, one boy was still performing a ritual, because it was the only thing he could do now. Sargat, standing nearby, could barely breathe. As someone who could sense divine power, he could clearly feel the gap between himself and Chen Ji-sung, as if he were sinking into the deep sea. But Ma Young-soon's threats kept echoing in Sargat's ears, snapping him back to reality. That guy had already entered a complete trance. If this kept going, Bai Yan was going to lose control. At that point, they had no choice but to take necessary measures. The next second, all the thugs rushed straight at Chen Ji-sung's group. Once again, the difference in numbers became painfully obvious. By the end of it, Cheol-gon was the only one still standing in front, holding the line alone. Sargat shoved through the crowd and stepped forward, looking every bit like a petty man drunk on borrowed power. At this, Cheol-gon sneered. A guy who doesn't even dare fight head-on sure talks a lot. That line instantly enraged Sargat, and he moved to put Cheol-gon down on the spot. But right then, a van suddenly came tearing in and cut off his move. Immediately after that, a whole group of men jumped out of the vehicle. And unbelievably, they had all been brought by Daeho, who was supposed to be lying in a hospital bed. After all, he had come today to earn money for his daughter. With that, Daeho put his gear back on once more. Without hesitation, all the bodyguards charged straight at the thugs. At the same time, Director Kim struggled back to his feet and connected his phone to the truck's audio system. In an instant, music blasted across the entire scene, and Chen Ji-sung's ritual was already nearing completion. Then, a fierce wave of sinister aura erupted from his body. That aura quickly spread toward the white porcelain serpent dragon. Then, it struck straight into the creature's belly, which immediately began to swell violently. Under normal circumstances, pouring power into a divine spirit that had already swallowed divine energy should have meant nothing. But suddenly, the white porcelain serpent dragon started losing control. Then, a crow flew out from its mouth. That crow rapidly morphed into a tiger, and the tiger immediately lunged at the white porcelain serpent dragon. The sight completely shattered Bai Yan's understanding as a shaman. The god Chon Ji-sung had summoned was called the Black Ghoul, a ghostly deity that fed on divine power and fear to keep growing stronger. And now, fueled by Chon Ji-sung's power alone, it had already grown to this size. Instantly, the white porcelain serpent dragon and the Black Ghoul clashed in fierce combat. At that very moment, Bai Yan completely lost the will to resist. It felt as if she was not facing an opponent at all, but an immovable wall. This killing curse could even speak in human language. Suddenly, its head began twisting in a horrifying way. In the end, it actually tore its own head off by force. Then it melted into a tide of black water. In just an instant, that black tide covered the entire area around the company. Bai Yan also realized that her divine power was mysteriously disappearing. A hand reached out from within the black tide. Then a massive figure rose from the ground. It was said that its existence had been passed down by word of mouth across 8 provinces, but no one had ever given a clear description of it. Perhaps that was because everyone feared something different in their heart. Suddenly, the giant's face began to change. It transformed into the thing Bai Yan feared most, Chairman Ma Young-soon. In a single instant, Bai Yan was completely swallowed by fear. The staff beside her were dragged into it as well. Had anyone ever said that fear was also a plague that could spread? Very soon, the target shifted to Sargat. Sargat's body trembled uncontrollably. The white-haired thug was reporting the battle situation beside him, but Sargat did not react at all. He had already been hit. Stunned, the white-haired thug froze in place. That high and mighty shaman he normally knew had actually been reduced to this state. The next second, Sargat collapsed to the ground. Even though the white-haired thug knew nothing about shamanic arts, he could tell this was what happened when a ritual succeeded. Besides, they had no extra manpower left to throw into the fight. Knowing that defeat was certain, the white-haired thug could only call off his men. Then, he fled the scene in a miserable state. Daeho and Chelgon finally let out a sigh of relief. Daeho had been injured again in this fight, but he still told Chelgon to check on Chon Ji-sung first. Chon Ji-sung was standing completely still. At that moment, the ritual was finally complete, and all that remained was the finishing blow. The giant grabbed the white porcelain serpent dragon with one hand, then it forced open the serpent's mouth. In the end, it ripped the creature in half. Chon Ji-sung watched the white porcelain serpent dragon disappear. Only then did he finally collapse in relief. The effects of the curse began to appear the next morning. First came the stock price crash. Then came massive human-driven sell-offs. After that, a contracted construction project collapsed. Negative news about large real estate projects, along with corruption tied to reconstruction work, was exposed one after another. Most importantly, Ma Young-sung was urgently arrested. On top of that, insiders connected to the case kept coming forward with more reports. With one problem after another piling up, Ma Young-sun was finally headed straight for prison. Meanwhile, Chen Ji-sung also woke up in the hospital room. When he turned his head, he saw Daeho beside him. The first thing Chon Ji-sung cared about was still Daeho's condition. Daeho told Chen Ji-sung to move less, or his stitches would tear open. Then, he said he heard Chon Ji-sung had been taking care of Suzy this whole time, and had even avenged him. He sincerely thanked him. But Chon Ji-sung said that if Daeho wanted to thank him, then they should work together long-term. After all, finding a high-paying job was not easy. And how could Daeho possibly give up this job? The others also came to visit them not long after. Chon Ji-sung nervously asked Lee Ji-won how the match had turned out. If the stock price had not dropped significantly, Golden Cross would be in danger. Lee Ji-won did not say anything. She simply took out her phone. Hoenn Construction's stock had been halted outright. Without a doubt, this was a massive success. Hoenn's stock had fallen by about 30% in a single day, and once the trading restriction was lifted tomorrow, it would drop again. Another pleasant collaboration. Chon Ji-sung finally relaxed. Thank goodness. This time had truly been dangerous. But Chen Ji-sung had done it again, and this time he'd done it completely with his own strength. But Ra-hoon suddenly appeared at that moment and broke the mood. She wanted to know how much money Golden Cross had made this time. Lee Ju-en joked that Ra-hoon should not be curious about how much the company earned, but whether her own pay would be cut this time. Daeho said he did not care how much he received this time. The band quickly chimed in their agreement. In the end, Ra-hoon threw the question to Chon Ji-sung. Chon Ji-sung only said that he would probably handle it properly. That made Ra-hoon stomp in frustration, and the hospital room instantly filled with a cheerful atmosphere. Soon it was time to share the rewards again. But this time, Justin had not prepared any cash. Then he quickly added that it was because there was too much money to withdraw all at once. Chun Ji-sung was the first to ask exactly how much it was. Justin did not speak. He simply wrote down a string of numbers and handed it to Chun Ji-sung. But judging from the reaction, the amount was definitely astronomical. If they wanted to settle and pay this commission immediately, the process alone would probably take years. Because of Chun Ji-sung, Golden Cross had not only stepped back from the brink, but had also raised its standing in the industry. Chun Ji-sung humbly said that it was not all his credit. He was just glad everything had gone smoothly. Justin finally understood why Lee Ju-eun was so fond of Chun Ji-sung. He was not weak, he was simply kind. So Justin had a proposal. Aside from the commission this time, Golden Cross would also share company stock with Chun Ji-sung. He was no longer just a shaman who performed rituals under their orders. He was now a partner growing alongside them. Meanwhile, in a detention center, Sargut came to visit Ma Young-sun as instructed. Ma Young-sun suddenly asked if Sargut thought he could relax, just because Ma was behind bars. Sargut immediately began defending himself in a panic. But Ma Young-sun coldly said that Sargut had no sense at all. What he should be doing now was getting rid of everyone who reported him, and everyone cooperating with the police. As long as Ma Young-sun was still alive, he would never let those people live comfortably. After working under him for so many years, they still did not know what they were supposed to do. Although Sargut was not a traitor, he still had to take responsibility for what had happened. Before answering, Ma Young-sun told Sargut to think carefully about his family. What he needed to do was kill Justin of Golden Cross and the sudden death shaman. In other words, kill them. Ma Young-sun wanted the people who had taken everything from him to pay the price. Sargut said that was impossible. Shamans on Yoido had to follow the rules. They could only target companies, not individuals. Even if someone broke the rules and cast a curse anyway, outside forces would interfere. At those words, Ma Young-sun looked at him with a grave expression. He threatened to kill Sargut and his family if he refused, then asked if there were any exceptions to those rules. Either Justin and the sudden death shaman died, or Sargut's family died. Even if Sargut's current ability was not enough to kill them directly, it did not matter. Ma Young-sun had already thought of that, which was why he had prepared a witchcraft vessel. It was an evil object, capable of increasing the power of a killing curse. Ma Young-sun told Sargut to do it unless he wanted to be buried together with his family. The creation process for this witchcraft vessel, called Bronze Bone, was utterly horrifying. First, before a newborn baby still in swaddling clothes could drink its first milk, it would be taken from its mother. Then it would be fed porridge mixed with milk and honey. Once the baby's stomach capacity had expanded, no more food would be given, not even a drop of water, leaving the baby to starve. It would be starved until only one breath remained. Before the baby died, the jar would be prepared, and the same milk porridge it had eaten before would be smeared inside. To survive, the baby would crawl into the jar with everything it had. But because of the jar's structure, once it entered, it could never come back out. Finally, the jar would be sealed, and an utterly vicious witchcraft vessel would be complete. Following the directions, Sargut arrived at a ritual hall. Inside the jar before him was the witchcraft vessel known as Bronze Bone, and inside it was the shriveled corpse of an infant. Even Sargut was startled. In the end, Sargut had no choice but to compromise. He immediately began the fan dance. The offering started struggling in pain, as if it were being choked. Then Sargut began calling out the word infant, again and again. Blood started running from his ears. With the next call, blood began leaking from his eyes as well. Then a swarm of insects poured from his mouth. Even so, Sargut struggled to continue the ritual. With each desperate call, a thick wave of sinister energy erupted from the jar. Moments later, black water sprayed out from inside it. In an instant, it flooded the entire room. Then the black water surged out of the building and rushed straight toward Golden Cross. Meanwhile, Chun Ji-sung and the others had no idea what was happening and were getting ready to attend a dinner party. Chun Ji-sung, who possessed the most divine power, was the first to sense that something was wrong. He looked toward the source of the aura and saw the child Gu clinging to the glass, staring straight at them. The others with divine power also noticed the abnormality at that moment. They all saw the terrifying thing pressed against the glass. They immediately realized this was not an ordinary curse. This was murder, and the child Gu was murmuring Chun Ji-sung's name, making its target painfully obvious. Lee Ju-eun had not expected the other side to break Yoido's only rule over a personal grudge. Now, they had to figure out how to deal with it immediately. Justin, unaware of the situation, was still calling everyone into the elevator, but Li Juan immediately told everyone to stop moving. Sure enough, a split second later, the elevator plunged straight down. Because of the child Gu's presence, every movement could trigger death. No one knew what would happen next, so they could only avoid making any unnecessary moves. At that moment, cracks began spreading across the glass, holding the child Gu back. Fortunately, Li Juan still had Master Sangmyeom's protective talisman on her, but the instant she took it out, the talisman crumbled into ash. Just how high was this thing's divine rank? At the same time, the glass could no longer withstand the pressure. Without warning, the child Gu smashed through the window. Then, it slowly looked around. Finally, it locked onto Chun Ji-sung. With just one glance, blood began flowing from Chun Ji-sung's ears and eyes. At the same time, the shamans of the Financial Supervisory Bureau also sensed the existence of the witchcraft vessel. The people of Yoido were absolutely not allowed to lose their physical bodies. She shifted her focus with a single thought. The child Gu was instantly bound in place, although Chun Ji-sung had still been attacked. Fortunately, it was not too late. Next, it would be up to the Gold Sand Bureau to cut the connection. The Gold Sand Bureau was an agency under the Financial Supervisory Bureau, and it had been created for a reason. When killing curses were first introduced to Yoido, the island itself had fallen into chaos. At first, shamans only cursed companies, but later, that gradually turned into cursing individuals, which led to actual casualties and a loss of talent. They had originally tried to control it by passing laws, but because of the investors, they had to give up and instead manage things through the Gold Sand Bureau. The purpose of this team was to select the best shamans and prevent people from losing their bodies because of killing curses. They respected the freedom of the market economy, but when necessary, they would also intervene. By now, the members of the Gold Sand Bureau had already arrived at the scene. A nearby team member warned that the area was heavily contaminated and that a goo had been used, so they had to be extremely careful. The team leader immediately ordered the members to raise the military flag and cut the connection in one strike. This was the flag of General Zhang, gatekeeper of Chanting City. Instantly, the team leader transformed into a warrior in heavy armor, holding a long blade. Then, he entered the ritual hall to check the situation inside. Sargut also struggled to crawl back up at that moment. He spat out a swarm of flying insects from his mouth and sent them rushing toward the team leader. But the team leader needed only 3 slashes to wipe out the entire swarm. Finally, he walked up to Sargut and judged this evil thing that should never have existed. Then he raised his long blade. A single iron slash cleaved into Sargut. Sargut finally lost consciousness. With that, the aura inside the jar also faded away. With its source of power cut off, the child goo began burning violently. In the end, it completely turned to ash. Li Juan hurried forward to check Chun Ji-sung's condition. His breathing and pulse were both terrible, and emergency treatment had to begin immediately. After that, Chun Ji-sung was carried into an ambulance. All they could do now was pray that nothing serious had happened. But strangely, there were no wounds on Chun Ji-sung's body. He even appeared physically healthy. And yet, from that day on, he never woke up again. This was Yoido, the financial island of H country. The people who worked here seemed to live under a strange illusion. Even though the money they handled belonged to their clients, the daily transaction amounts passing through their hands were enormous, sometimes reaching tens of trillions. Ordinary people living on tiny wages were pitiful in their eyes. Yet those people still believed they were above everyone else. At least, that was how the director of the Gold Sand Bureau had always seen it. But now, people like that were actually kneeling in front of her, on Yoido. If a shaman was only a tool for making profit, they could simply buy another one. The fact that they were going this far meant this shaman was not just a tool to them. That made the director of the Gold Sand Bureau begin considering whether she should help. According to the rules, the Gold Sand Bureau was not allowed to help any specific shaman or company on Yoido, but this was still a human life. Although the Gold Sand Bureau had no responsibility in this matter, she said she could make an exception and help a little. Then, she summoned the servant god she worshipped, Namsan. Namsan placed a hand above Chun Ji-sung's head. Then it entered Chun Ji-sung's mental world. Li Juan waited anxiously from the side. A moment later, Namsan gave its answer. Chun Ji-sung's inner world was empty. To be precise, there was no vessel inside him capable of enshrining a god. What filled this boy's heart was an overwhelming surge of yin energy. Thus, the curse was not the only reason Chun Ji-sung had fallen unconscious. The curse had merely accelerated an inevitable result. The real reason was that he could not calm the overflowing yin energy inside his body. This usually happened to people who had no god possessing them. Fortunately, as long as he received a divine descent, he could recover. But now, another problem appeared. Where were they supposed to obtain that divine blessing? Until now, Chen Ji-song had shown no signs of divine descent at all. And if someone without a god could still emit that level of divine power and yin energy, an ordinary vessel could never handle it. Finding a shaman capable of withstanding that scale was also a problem. Only a shaman with greater divine power than Chen Ji-song could perform the divine descent ritual for him. But every single person at that level was a competitor. The only known person who was not a competitor was the woman in front of them. However, the god she worshipped was an imperial god, so she did not meet the conditions, and she had no intention of helping either. Even so, Li Juin kept begging her. In the end, she softened. After all, this was about saving someone's life, so she pointed Li Juin toward a possible path. Early the next morning, Li Juin brought Chen Ji-song to Mount Tohang. She was there to find a powerful rising shaman. A large crowd had already gathered in front of the shrine. That made Cheldon feel that this place must be truly effective. But Li Juin stressed that the number of people was not what mattered. What mattered was the kind of people gathered here. From the older couples over there, they could tell that the shaman they were about to meet worshipped Grandmother Samson. After all, she was one of the 3 great gods in shamanic faith, so she was bound to be extremely selective. Li Juin briefly explained why they had come, but the shaman said there was no need to explain in detail. Grandmother Samson had already heard everything. Compared with that, the shaman herself was actually a little shy around strangers. Looking at the shy girl in front of her, Li Juin could hardly believe that she was the vessel of Grandmother Samson. It felt like even basic communication would be difficult. But as the bell began to ring, her eyes gradually sharpened. Once the divine descent succeeded, she seemed to become a completely different person. The shift in her aura made even Li Juin tremble. Then she walked up to Li Juin. She warned Li Juin not to make eye contact, and Li Juin felt the atmosphere grow so heavy that even breathing became difficult. Then Grandmother Samson asked whether Li Juin had come to beg her to perform a divine descent on Chen Ji-song and wake him up. Aside from divine descent, did Li Juin want to know another, even faster way to wake him? What came next left Li Juin frozen in shock. That method was physical union, using heavenly yang energy to fill the overflowing yin energy inside Chen Ji-song. Meanwhile, Chen Ji-song was alone in his mental world. He vaguely remembered that he had come here after being killed by a creature in the form of an infant, but he did not understand why he could still feel stimulation from the outside world, or how he was supposed to overcome this situation. Was he supposed to jump in? He quickly rejected that idea. If he was still alive, Li Juin would definitely find a way to save him. Until then, he should not make things more complicated. But how long was he supposed to keep relying on his team leader? At the very least, he should overcome the danger that had fallen onto him by himself. He had to become a true partner in every sense. So Chen Ji-song decided to try. However, he would probably regret that decision very soon. The thing formed from his naturally powerful yin energy, and the trauma he had suffered later in life was filling his entire body. In the end, he simply stopped struggling. His consciousness was just about to fade away. Suddenly, a beam of light shone in. Then, Chen Ji-song was lifted up by a pair of hands. Another hand appeared in front of him. Grandmother Samson was above him, waiting to talk once he regained his senses. Chen Ji-song could hardly believe his eyes. After Grandmother Samson briefly explained the situation, Chen Ji-song finally understood what had happened. In short, if he wanted to keep working on Yoido, he would have to undergo a divine descent ritual. Chen Ji-song said firmly that even if he had to be a shaman for the rest of his life, he would not regret it. Now that he had companions by his side, he would no longer have to walk a lonely road forever. For a moment, even Grandmother Samson could not tell whether that was confidence or arrogance. Suddenly, she changed the subject and said she had no reason or obligation to perform shamanic arts for him. In fact, that was only reasonable. As a heavenly god, helping someone who was about to receive an evil god was morally difficult to justify. Chen Ji-song asked in return why she had saved him then, and Grandmother Samson said it was only to pass the time. Next, she had a serious question for him. Why did he want to become a shaman? Was it because he had been swallowed by raging yin energy, or because he had been struck by a killing curse? Chen Ji-song simply answered that this was the only talent that could make him happy. It was also the only path through which he could be recognized. He knew that profiting by cursing others was wrong. Even so, he had still done it. After doing so, he finally had real companions by his side. Money and fame no longer mattered as much. He only wanted to use his ability to help the people around him. And someday, he also wanted to become truly happy. As soon as he finished speaking, Chon Ji-sung bowed deeply before Grandmother Samson and made his plea. Grandmother Samson immediately became interested. The chaotic age was not created by evil gods. Everything depended on the choices made by the shamans who worshipped them. With that thought, Grandmother Samson accepted Chon Ji-sung's request. She would hold a divine descent ritual for him. As for the rest of the conversation, he could hear it after he woke up. Then, Chon Ji-sung gradually regained consciousness. But the first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was a woman lying naked beside him. At first, Chon Ji-sung was completely stunned. Once he came back to himself, he suddenly looked down at his lower body, having no idea whether the situation he was imagining had actually happened. Grandmother Samson continued to tease him. Chon Ji-sung's face instantly turned so red, it looked like it might explode. A moment later, he let out a sharp scream. After that little incident, the Shrine Maiden explained the precautions to both of them. The divine descent ritual had to be scheduled as soon as possible. If Chon Ji-sung did not receive the descent quickly, he would lose consciousness again. Then she shyly told Chon Ji-sung not to make eye contact with her. In truth, she had only transferred body heat to him. Nothing else had happened at all. So why did it feel so easy to misunderstand? Lee Ju-eun answered that she had not had time to talk privately back then, so she had no choice but to skip over those minor explanations. And the divine descent ritual itself also had one problem. They had to consider the massive scale of Chen Ji-sung's vessel. When the descent began, many ghost-like things would swarm toward him, and that was exactly how it worked. The real guest usually appeared last. So, before that guest arrived, they would build a defensive force around Chon Ji-sung to protect him. That meant Chon Ji-sung only needed to focus his mind and prepare to accept the non-human existence inside his body. Evening quickly arrived. Chon Ji-sung felt a faint uneasiness in his heart. Even though all the staff here were highly professional, he still felt strangely worried. Suddenly, Lee Ju-eun patted him on the back. She asked Chon Ji-sung if he was starting to hesitate. Chon Ji-sung replied that he had no other choice anyway, so he might as well accept it gladly. But that answer did not get to the real point at all. Lee Ju-eun told him that once he accepted a divine blessing, he could never return to the ordinary world. For the rest of his life, he would have to serve a god. She had been afraid of becoming like that, which was why she had accepted his grandmother's shamanic spell back then. Chon Ji-sung might feel afraid too, and on top of that, Lee Ju-eun felt guilty toward him. If she had not brought him into this world, maybe none of this would have happened. But how could Chon Ji-sung care about that? This was the path he had chosen himself. Praying for divine descent was his choice. Becoming a shaman was his choice. Performing killing curses with his companions was also his choice. This was the dream he had decided to keep chasing, and for that, he could accept whatever came next. So Lee Ju-eun did not need to feel guilty anymore. She only needed to cheer him on. In Lee Ju-eun's eyes, this boy was far too steady, and even a little handsome. Then, she slowly leaned closer to Chon Ji-sung. She gently kissed him on the cheek. That was Lee Ju-eun's way of cheering him on. Before anyone realized it, night had quietly fallen, and Chen Ji-sung's divine descent ritual was about to begin. A divine descent ritual was like a signpost, guiding the shaman to place the correct god into the vessel. The first variable was the lesser spirits that coveted the vessel. They craved the divine power inside the vessel, and the more attractive the vessel was, the more desperately they would rush toward it. The second variable was a change in the guest's spiritual will. Even if the vessel was the right size and suitable for them, some gods would still fight for dominance through sheer pressure. The third variable was the condition of the vessel itself. A divine descent ritual was a ceremony that consumed a massive amount of mental power and divine energy. During this process, if the vessel gave up or reached the point where he could no longer keep performing the spirit dance, the divine descent ritual would be cut off on the spot. Even though that was the basic procedure, Grandmother Samson still asked Chon Ji-sung one last time before it began if he was truly ready. Chon Ji-sung answered that there was no better option anyway, so what was the point of asking again? Grandmother Samson smiled and said that in this day and age, even department stores put refund policies on their products. She was just going through the process. Still, the fact that Chon Ji-sung had that kind of resolve was impressive. Then she signaled for the ritual music to begin. The ritual music instantly started. She chanted an incantation and swung the ritual implement down across both of Chon Ji-sung's shoulders. At that exact moment, the ritual's effect finally kicked in. a dense wave of yin energy erupted from Chen Ji-sung's body. It spread outward in every direction, with him at the center. Even Blackie, who was guarding the entrance, felt it. Something was coming. In the distance, countless gates suddenly appeared, and the sight looked exactly like a night parade of 100 demons. Suddenly, every gate swung open at once. A swarm of monsters burst out from inside them. They charged straight toward the ritual grounds. There was no way Blackie was just going to let them pass. But those monsters were starving out of their minds. They did not care in the slightest and lunged forward like a pack of rabid dogs. Even so, Blackie wiped out the lead monster with a single strike. The moment its head was severed, its soul scattered on the spot. From here on out, Blackie would decide who got through. Anyone too weak could crawl right back to the darkest corner of hell. But for those monsters, there was no way they were going to miss a feast like this. Li Juin was also standing on the mountaintop, watching everything from afar. 5 full hours had already passed since the divine descent ritual began, and so far, things were still going smoothly. All she could do was hope Chen Ji-sung could hold out. As for Chen Ji-sung, he was already at his limit. Every second felt as long as a full minute in that nearly frozen stretch of time. All he could feel was exhaustion and pain, like his entire body was about to shut down. Suddenly, Grandmother Samson called out to him and told him to get a grip. They were already in the second half now. Endure it to the very end, and call for the god who truly sits you. Chen Ji-sung finally snapped back to clarity. In the end, his fate really did have to remain in his own hands. At that exact moment, the gate exploded open with a thunderous boom. Grandmother Samson understood that a true candidate had arrived. Through the thick black smoke, a figure could be faintly seen. An evil ghost with 8 arms appeared before them, and it was none other than the 8-armed hand ghost from before. Grandmother Samson told it to prove its strength or crawl back where it came from. At those words, the 8-armed hand ghost began boasting that it was a supreme existence. It asked what right she had to demand proof from it. Grandmother Samson simply told it to come at her. The 8-armed hand ghost instantly flew into a rage. But Grandmother Samson did not indulge it at all, cutting off one of its hands with a single slash. Only then did the 8-armed hand ghost stop acting recklessly, insisting that it had a bond with Chen Ji-sung and would become a god worthy of that vessel. But before the evil god could finish speaking, a giant claw suddenly appeared and smashed it into a mist of blood. Grandmother Samson sighed. Finally, the real main event of the night had arrived. The one taking the stage was an evil god in the form of a tiger, which meant it had achieved godhood in that very shape. This tiger symbolized the terror of plague, an old god filled with resentment toward being forgotten, known as Lady Huan the Tiger. Even Grandmother Samson could not help feeling worried. With her current strength, she might not be a match for this tiger. But at this point, she could not back down. Lady Huan spoke first, demanding that Grandmother Samson hand over Chen Ji-sung. Just as Lady Huan said, Grandmother Samson should have guided Chen Ji-sung immediately. However, they still did not know whether Chen Ji-sung could handle a god of this level. So before that, Lady Huan's power had to be weakened. Grandmother Samson then declared war on Lady Huan. In response, Lady Huan lunged forward. Grandmother Samson raised her guard with visible difficulty. The woman and the tiger locked into a direct standoff. Suddenly, Lady Huan struck with a fierce claw. Since Grandmother Samson was only borrowing a body right now, she took the full force of the attack. Lady Huan could not understand why this heavenly god was going so far to stop her. But Grandmother Samson's goal had never been to win. It was to do everything she could to preserve Chen Ji-sung's dominance after the divine descent. And there was another reason too. Chen Ji-sung's grandmother had done the exact same thing before. Undeterred, Lady Huan gathered her strength and lunged again. Grandmother Samson shook the bell in her hand. With her at the center, vegetation instantly erupted around them. Shackles woven from thorns bound Lady Huan tightly. Now, the moment to decide victory had finally arrived. By the next morning, Grandmother Samson had finally been defeated. But Lady Huan's power had also been weakened, almost to its limit. She immediately swallowed Chen Ji-sung whole. And with that, Chen Ji-sung entered Lady Huan's inner world. If Chen Ji-sung failed the trial, he would be completely torn to pieces. The first question was this: after gaining power, what exactly did he want to achieve in this lifetime? Chen Ji-sung's answer was his own happiness. If that was the case, he should not have accepted an evil god. He should have accepted a heavenly god or an ancestral god instead. But Chen Jisung did not have that kind of talent. All he had was the overflowing yin energy inside him. From the very beginning, he had never been given a choice. The reason he accepted becoming the vessel of an evil god was solely to fight for his own happiness. He wanted to become a shaman who used the power of an evil god to seize a happy life. That was Chen Jisung's ambition. Becoming an existence that people feared was obviously much harder than secretly taking revenge on a specific person. Lady Huan also remarked that the people who had summoned her before had mostly shared similar goals. They either wanted to take revenge on someone, spread a plague, or simply collect a debt. Those were all boring tasks, and none of them were remotely difficult for Lady Huan. In response, Chen Jisung only smiled faintly. It seemed he had successfully caught her interest. Just as Grandmother Samson had said before, in the world of gods, the human body did not hold much meaning, especially for evil gods with no grand cause. To them, a human body was nothing more than a small window to drink from. Therefore, Chen Jisung had to prove he was completely different from the vessels that came before him. Beyond that, they would also test the vessel's strength. So Chen Jisung had to pour out as much of his yin energy as possible. He had to prove that his bowl was large enough to overwhelm the one sitting at the table. With the question and answer phase concluded, it was time for the real business. A rift opened across Chen Jisung's chest. Yin energy poured out from within. But that level still was not enough to satisfy Lady Huan. So, Chen Jisung poured in even more. Suddenly, an enormous amount of yin energy erupted outward. At that moment, Lady Huan realized something was wrong. This amount had already far surpassed what she could endure. Everything was exactly as Grandmother Samson had predicted. Chen Jisung was not a tool to be tamed, but a rebel with ambition and will. With this, she could finally repay the debt she owed Chen Jisung's grandmother. Meanwhile, a quiet scene unfolded in a nursing home far away. His grandmother, who had long since developed dementia, suddenly sighed. "My poor grandson, so this day has finally come." Chen Jisung's divine descent ritual was a complete success. Before leaving, he bowed deeply to repay that kindness. The shrine maiden warned him not to forget why he had received divine descent in the first place. From this day forward, Chen Jisung no longer had to worry about losing consciousness. Justin was very happy about Chen Jisung's return. Chen Jisung, however, apologized for being unable to make money for the company while he was gone. Li Juin told him to relax, because after the Hoan incident, Golden Cross would no longer collapse, even if they did nothing for a while. But Justin looked wounded by that statement. After all, who would ever complain about having too much money? In any case, seeing Chen Jisung healthy again was already a blessing. And since there was no time to waste, it was time to discuss something important. They needed to set Golden Cross's strategy for the second half of the year and review the mistakes from the first half. The most important thing now was how to protect their shaman and maximize their profits. First, to put it in baseball terms, Chen Jisung was their key player. He was like Golden Cross's ace pitcher. Once he stepped onto the field, the match was practically guaranteed. But forcing that player to appear in every single game would be torture, and it would slowly eat away at his life force. The same applied to Chen Jisung. He had indeed successfully completed his divine descent. Even so, constantly performing shamanic rituals would still erode his life force as a shaman. Just think about it. Almost every time Chen Jisung finished a ritual, he ended up in the hospital. Justin agreed that Chen Jisung could not perform too many rituals, but he was more curious about how they were going to maximize profit. Li Juun said that instead of constantly fighting with shamanic rituals head-on, they should make use of a nether relic. Chen Jisung's current title was the Sudden Death Shaman. If they could raise him to the level of the King of Sudden Death, that title alone could intimidate their opponents and reduce unnecessary trouble. Justin admitted that this was indeed a good proposal, but they still needed a sacrifice worthy of the name. In truth, Li Juun had already chosen someone. The moment the projection appeared, even Justin could not help but gasp. He asked if Li Juun was seriously planning to target someone who had already entered the ranks of first-rate shamans. But Chen Jisung felt confident that he could win. Li Juun had not expected Chen Jisung to grasp the situation so quickly. What they had to do was force that person to yield, then try to steal the title of king. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to a certain hotel. A woman had just finished bathing. She was Chen Jisung's target this time. Luo Hua, the killing curse shaman of Canary Capital. The idea that some newcomer who had just arrived wanted to force her into retirement was laughable to her. Serving beside her was Qing Shu, a shaman from the same company. He was not worried at all that Lu Hua would lose this ritual battle. After all, she was a top-tier shaman known as the Queen of Killing Curses. The two of them went to the company together to meet the boss. Compared with the shaman's calm attitude, the boss looked completely lost. Facing Golden Cross's attack, he had no idea how to respond. If the other side succeeded, this quarter's performance would be completely ruined. But Luahua told him not to worry, because her shamanic arts would cover the losses. As for those arrogant people, especially that cocky shaman, she would show them exactly why she was called the Queen of Killing Curses. Preparations began immediately. This ritual left Qingshu visibly excited, though it was hard to tell whether he was excited about the shamanic arts or the woman herself. On Chen Jisong's side, they were also preparing for the ritual. After hearing that the other side was also a two-shaman team, Rahun declared that this time, she would not let Chen Jisong fight alone again. In this ritual battle, one side was going down for good. This explosive news soon spread across all of Yoedo. The reason Lu Hua accepted this duel was because she had always carried an inferiority complex. For a long time, she had been the number 2, always suppressed by the number 1, Chen Qi. Back then, she had been the one to drag Chen Qi down and become number 1 herself. But perhaps because of that, she felt she had never truly been recognized. But no matter what, this duel was as satisfying as a fine bottle of red wine. If Chen Jisong lost, then it would count as revenge for Gong Yonghua. On the other hand, if Lo Hua lost, they would finally learn what Chen Jisong's divine nature truly was. In short, this ritual battle could only benefit them. Soon, the first round began, and a gate suddenly appeared above Golden Cross. Chen Jisong's star god White Tiger made its first appearance. Luahua refused to fall behind. A gray, shadowed gate appeared above Canary Capital. Was her god really just a piece of wood? Of course not. Her god was Kuru, the one-horned Ghost King. When the White Tiger faced the Ghost King, which side would come out on top? A shaman's strength was usually determined by the servant god they had contracted. Lu Hua clearly remembered when she first set foot on Yoedo. She had witnessed a sight that shocked her deeply. A heavenly god worshipped by a blessing shaman had killed a calamity god worshipped by a killing curse shaman. Meanwhile, her own servant god was just an ordinary ghost with nothing special about it. It was no different from the kind of ordinary ghost from folktales meant to scare children. But Lo Hua firmly believed that a lack of talent could be made up for with effort. So her ghost grew stronger day by day. In the end, it finally reached the peak of all ghosts, and even earned the title of Ghost King. But none of that could stand against raw talent. In just one exchange, the Ghost King's head was bitten clean off. The sight left everyone stunned. Even before receiving his divine descent, Chen Jisong had already been terrifyingly strong. Now he had even surpassed a veteran shaman like Rahun. That gap was so huge that even Rahun found it hard to believe. Then, Chen Jisong decided to end the fight. The White Tiger had long since grown tired of this boring duel as well. It grabbed the Ghost King's head and tossed it into the air. Then it slammed the Ghost King's head back down. King Shu stood frozen in place, his face filled with disbelief. His mentor, who had once won every battle, had actually suffered a complete defeat. And because the Ghost King had been destroyed, Lo Hua suffered the backlash of the curse. She had struggled her entire life, yet in the end, she still could not defeat these monsters. Was this really the limit of her life as a shaman? King Shu looked at the devastated woman before him and made up his mind. First, he pulled out a strand of Lu Hua's hair. Then, he took a talisman from his coat. That was right. He was going to perform substitute killing and forcibly transfer the curse from Luohua's body. And the reason he was willing to go this far was because Luohua had once saved his life. Qing Shu had once suffered from a strange illness that no examination could diagnose. When he was waiting alone at a station to die, he met Luohua, and Luohua accurately described his symptoms. To King Shu, it felt like he had grabbed the final lifeline. Luohua performed a ritual for him and cured his illness. She even helped him get proper clothes. From that moment on, Qing Shu became her support shaman. Now, this was the perfect time for him to repay that debt. Suddenly, a gate appeared in the sky. This was the ghost summoned by Qing Shu. Then, the ghost forcibly twisted off its own head and threw it toward the Ghost King. The two ghosts merged into one. Lo Hua gave the command. Instantly, the Ghost King grew 2 more arms from its back. At this sight, Chen Jisong could not help but tense up. But before he could react, the 4-armed Ghost King roared at the White Tiger. Its overwhelming resentment made 2 lines of bloody tears stream from its eyes. That finally sparked a hint of interest in the white tiger. Without hesitation, the white tiger lunged at the Ghost King with a fierce swipe of its claws. But unexpectedly, the Ghost King forcibly stopped the white tiger's attack. Then it countered with a punch straight into the white tiger's stomach. Chen Ji-song also suffered a heavy blow because of it. Right after that, energy gathered inside the Ghost King's mouth. A red beam of light blasted straight toward the white tiger. However, the two arms on the Ghost King's back had also vanished. It turned out the white tiger had seized the chance to bite them off. Then, it swallowed them whole. The residual divine power in those arms caused the white tiger to take on a human form. Both shamans issued their commands simultaneously. The white tiger and the Ghost King struck each other head-on. A storm of brutal attacks poured out in an instant. Finally, the shockwave exploded and blasted both sides apart. Li Taeha was completely absorbed in the battle. This was the first time he had ever seen this kind of pure hand-to-hand fight. And even though Chun Ji-song's divine rank was clearly higher, the Ghost King was still managing to fight the white tiger evenly. Luo Hua had cut ties with her family for the sake of shamanic arts, so Qing Shu was almost the only family she had left. He was not her entire life, but a life without him would never be complete. That was why she would curse Chun Ji-song until he died. Because of that violent emotional surge, the Ghost King once again closed the gap with the white tiger. Li Taeha felt lucky he had not gotten involved in this mess. He decided he would go to a shrine and pray after this. After all, it had been a long time since he had felt this kind of thrill. The battle between the rooftop and the shield platform finally reached a fever pitch. This fight continued for an entire night. In the end, the white tiger pierced through the Ghost King's body with its claws. The Ghost King gradually faded away. At the same time, Lu Hua's body finally reached its limit. She collapsed to the ground. Chun Ji-song also fainted from exhaustion. Yoido was a place that did not care about the process. The real result would only be shown once the stock market opened. Countless companies' stock prices dropped because of it. But that left Justin a little surprised, because some of those companies had not even been on their target list. In truth, all of this was because of the explosion from the night before. The blood of the slain god had spilled over onto those companies. While they were talking, Chan Ji-song woke up. The first thing he cared about was the result of the battle. Li Ju-en did not say anything. She simply held her phone in front of him. Although the increase was small, it was already a solid result, especially since the other side had risked their life to intercept the curse. More importantly, Chan Ji-song had now become the undisputed #1 killing curse shaman. It was a known fact that Chun Ji-song ended up in the hospital almost every time a ritual ended. However, Justin suddenly appeared and broke the somber mood. Only then did Chun Ji-song notice that gifts had piled up like a mountain in the hospital room without him realizing it. And most of those gifts were extremely expensive. Clearly, these were goodwill offerings from other financial companies. Some wanted to latch onto Golden Cross while they had the chance. Some wanted to use Chun Ji-song to overturn Osan Finance's position, and some were simply declaring neutrality. Park Tae-soo, the chairman of Osan Finance, was thinking about how to respond. But Lee Tae-ha suggested leaving things alone for now. His reason was that this would actually raise Osan Finance's value. The rise of killing curse shamans would only make blessing shamans look even more important. Once Chun Ji-song had grown enough, Lee Tae-ha would step in to reap the profits himself. Park Tae-soo knew this guy was definitely scheming something, so he told him to name his price. Lee Tae-ha did not beat around the bush and directly asked for an annual hiring fee of 50 billion won. Meanwhile, Luo Hua also woke up in her room. The sharp pain running through her body reminded her that everything from yesterday had truly happened. Just then, she suddenly noticed the person taking care of her. Luo Hua immediately understood everything. A surge of emotion welled up inside her. This must have been the curse Qing Shu left behind for her. On the other side, everyone came to the hospital room to visit Chun Ji-song. Chun Ji-song pointed at the gifts and told everyone to take whatever they wanted. Daeho did not hold back and took 2 items right away. Just then, Chun Ji-song noticed that his assistant shaman was not there. Daeho told him that Rahun would only come by at night, and the first thing Rahun said when she saw Chun Ji-song was that she was resigning. Chun Ji-song was instantly at a loss, and his first thought was whether he had done something wrong. But Rahun told him she had done nothing wrong. The reason she was resigning was that she was not strong enough. Back when they fought Gong Yonghua, she had still felt that her abilities were at least decent. But during the fight against Hoenn, she realized she could barely do anything. The frustration of being unable to protect her companions had been etched deep into her heart. She had actually thought about becoming stronger and had already started taking action for it. But that gap was not something effort alone could close. In the end, she had even lost her courage. A coward like her could not be of any help at all. Then she handed Chun Ji-sung her resignation letter, saying she would return every bit of money she had earned before. Compared with the little she had done, Chun Ji-sung had done far too much for her. But Chun Ji-sung grabbed Ra-hun's hand. No matter what, he still wanted to keep working with her. Chun Ji-sung might be a genius when it came to curses, but even a genius could not do everything alone. Ra-hun told him to find a better shaman instead. She did not want to hold him back, and she was not joking. Ra-hun said she was serious. It was true that she had originally come for the money. But now, she truly did not want to be the one dragging everyone down anymore. But Chun Ji-sung did not care about that at all. He still hoped everyone could stay with him until the end, and if someone gave up halfway, that would only become an emotional burden for him. In the end, Ra-hun gave in. She would withdraw her resignation, but she hoped Chun Ji-sung would give her some time off. Early the next morning, Ra-hun arrived at the estate where her adoptive father lived. She had come to her master's residence to grow stronger, but just as she was about to enter, she was stopped by her fellow disciples. They accused her of leaving on a whim back then and still having the nerve to come back now. But her master still chose to let her in. Ra-hun slowly walked up to a withered old man. In a weak voice, her master asked why she had come back. Of course, Ra-hun wanted to become stronger. Only then did her master understand. She had finally found a reason to grow stronger. Although the other disciples might have complaints, he was still happy to see her again. Then her master asked his fourth disciple, Yoon-ga, to examine Ra-hun's body. But the conclusion was that Ra-hun no longer had any hope of becoming stronger. Ra-hun could not understand. Her teacher had clearly said before that she had talent. Yoon-ga asked her if she truly knew what talent was. Ra-hun asked back if talent was not something people were born with. Seeing how confused she looked, Yoon-ga explained that talent was like the random materials handed out in an art class for a project. Even if the materials were not distributed fairly to everyone, as long as someone used them skillfully, they could still create a high-scoring piece. Just as Ra-hun had said, the materials she had received in the past were actually decent. If she had used them properly, she might have become a capable shaman. But she had failed to seize that chance. What exactly had she been thinking when she accepted a Western evil god back then? Ra-hun answered that she had simply wanted to become special. That was why she had not chosen an Eastern god. At those words, Yoon-ga felt a headache coming on. After all, the farther the distance between the god and the vessel, the harder it was to bring out true power. Her servant god could not give her enough strength at all. Even so, Ra-hun refused to give up and asked if there was any other way. But Yoon-ga could not think of a good solution either. Devastated, Ra-hun instantly burst into tears. Yoon-ga could not help but blame her for being so reckless back then. If she had already taken the wrong first step, how was she supposed to continue down the road ahead? Just then, her master appeared. He said he did have one method, and that was to enter the ink gate. Ra-hun was completely confused by this, but Yoon-ga's expression turned serious. The so-called ink gate was actually a small courtyard on the outermost edge of Tanyun Pavilion. This courtyard had cost hundreds of millions to build and was known as the Space of Nothingness. Its purpose was to help shamans who had problems communicating with their gods. Ra-hun was confused. If all she had to do was pray inside a room, was there really a need to make it this serious? Yoon-ga told her not to be naive. Inside that room, she would experience what it felt like to have her senses completely cut off, leaving only the sound of her own breathing and heartbeat. Those sounds would trigger nausea and dizziness, and in the darkness, her pupils would remain dilated to their limit. The crawling white lines and hissing noise would gradually make her hallucinate. So only 3 kinds of people could come out of that room: quitters, lunatics, and the strong. Her master would go in to check on her after 3 days. The urgency Ra-hun felt right now was the only weapon an ordinary shaman possessed. As her master finished speaking, Ra-hun entered a darkness as silent as death. After an unknown amount of time, Ra-hun, unable to see the sun, lost all sense of time. Sound was completely blocked. Space felt like it had been compressed infinitely, and the person inside became unbearably small. In this place, everything she could do, and everything she had to do, depended entirely on mental power. But ever since the day she accepted her god, that god had never answered another prayer. Were so-called gods nothing but fiction, or had it simply treated her as entertainment? Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, and she felt like she would go insane at any moment. Maybe entering this space had been madness from the start. But she would not give up. Yoido was a den of lunatics anyway, and until she received an answer, she would never leave. Just then, a voice rang out. It was a chilling call, and Rahun's servant god, Mephisto, made its first appearance. The demon god Mephisto finally answered its believer. Mephisto pulled Rahun into its arms, like an old friend reunited after a long separation. It asked softly, "Lost lamb, what has made you so sad?" Rahun's voice trembled as she accused Mephisto of abandoning her, saying all of her misery had come from it. Mephisto asked what she wanted, and what Rahun had wanted at first was only the power to follow in a genius's footsteps. Mephisto said nothing. It simply reached out slowly. Then it carved a mark onto Rahun's hand. From this moment on, it would fulfill its duty as her master and listen to the prayers of its livestock. She did not need to feel anxious just because her master was far away. Mephisto would look down on everyone from the farthest peak of the other shore. After all of that was complete, Rahun returned to the light. Her master anxiously asked how things had gone. Rahun only smiled and showed the pattern on her hand. That sight left Yunga frozen in place. He recognized the pattern on her hand as the deep mark, and the density of divine power flowing through Rahun had become much richer because of it. Yunga was sincerely happy for her. Her master sighed in relief. Then his head suddenly slumped forward. Alarmed, Rahun hurried forward to check on him. Only after confirming that her master was still breathing did she finally let out a sigh of relief. Thankfully, the exhaustion from waiting had simply caught up with him. Gently, she placed her hand on top of her master's, just as he had done for her when she was a child. Living as a shaman was lonely by nature, so one had to cherish their own tears. Yunga encouraged her, telling her to go all out, no matter where she went from here. Rahun said firmly that she definitely would. Then she said goodbye to the old man before her, the man who was both her adoptive father and her master. That also meant her short vacation was officially over. The joy of reunion came just that suddenly. And, for Chon Ji-sung, it had been a long time since he felt that. Lee Ju-eun muttered from the side that all that worrying had clearly been unnecessary. Everyone immediately started a champagne party. Suddenly, their eyes shifted to the side. With a serious face, Lee Ju-eun pushed Rahun right next to Chun Ji-sung, then showered the two of them with champagne. The two of them smiled at each other at the same time. That second half of the year became Golden Cross's best performing period. No one on Yoido could shake Golden Cross's position anymore, and even if someone tried, they would be crushed by shamanic power. Riding the momentum like a massive wave, Golden Cross opened the door to a new era. None of them knew that this was only the calm before the storm. The Minister of Finance suddenly met with the director of the Gold Sand Bureau, and a conversation like this was a first on Yoido. But the director of the Gold Sand Bureau could not guess what these high-ranking officials wanted, and that immediately gave her a bad feeling. Inside the conference room were Kim Chang-mok, the head of the Financial Supervisory Service, and Ho Song-jun, the Minister of Finance. Their purpose was actually simple. The president wanted the Korean stock market to more than double during his term. Only then would the people shift their attention away from the myth that real estate never loses. They would begin taking interest in stock investment instead, which would help solve the difficult problem of controlling housing prices. The director still looked completely confused. Noticing this, Hail Sung-jun added that the president had heard the rumors about the sudden death shaman. Their use of killing curses to drive down stock prices went directly against national policy, so he probably did not need to spell out what came next. The president wanted killing curse shamans to disappear from Yoido. For that reason, he had gathered the island's most influential business leaders for a meeting. He Sung-jun stood and invited everyone to raise their glasses, as if celebrating the revival of the stock market in advance. Everyone rose to their feet. Everyone except Park Tae-soo, the chairman of Osong Golden Dragon. Ho Sung-jun coldly asked whether he had something to say. Park Tae-soo did have something to say. The cost and the reward of this plan clearly did not match. The president's term was only 5 years. After that, whether the plan succeeded or failed, everything would be over. Hyo Sung-jun told him to speak plainly. Park Tae-soo said the government would need to provide information to the companies gathered here first, and supply enough funding when necessary. If those conditions were truly met, then driving all the killing curse shamans living on Yoido out would not be impossible. Park Tae-soo naturally agreed with Lee Tae-ha's idea. They should not only drive them out, but if necessary, secretly eliminate those companies as well. After a divine order was issued, Lee Tae-ha prepared to face the final struggle of the shamans. There was the second seat shaman of Osong Finance, Shin Myo-jin. Next was the third seat, Lu Pu-ho. Then came the fourth seat, Namgung Heishin, and finally, the 5th seat, Diwen. All 4 of these elites were summoned together by Li Teha. First, they needed to review a list of projects requiring blessing rituals. The ones marked in purple were connected to killing cursed shamans, and he hoped everyone would give it their all. Shin Myojin asked why their strategy had suddenly become so aggressive. Li Teha explained that it was because the government had stepped in. With that factor now involved, this was the perfect hunting season for them. So everyone could use their hidden strength without holding anything back. First came the massive support promised by the Minister of Finance, along with tax investigations into investment companies that profited through shamanic arts. Then came soaring stock prices, and the direction of public opinion in the news. All of this gradually allowed blessing shamans to replace killing cursed shamans. During this period, Chonji-san had also been feeling deeply uneasy. For killing cursed shamans and the companies that profited from them, this was an age of chaos. And what did an age of chaos need most? A king who could save them, of course. The king of sudden death, Director Kim, entered and informed them that the killing cursed shamans and their company representatives had arrived. Before this, those people had already held a meeting led by Mr. Li Bangshin, and this crisis had clearly driven them into a corner. As a result, several people who disagreed with Li Bangshin got into a fierce argument. Li Bangshin immediately stopped the farce and sighed that things would have been better if Luo Hua were still around. So he decided to make use of Chan Ji-song. The moment he said that, everyone present froze. Then someone immediately rejected the idea. After all, not long ago, they had refused to acknowledge Chan Ji-song's status as king. That nearly made Li Bangshin swing his cane straight into the man's face. He said he was not senile yet. Right now, killing cursed shamans were leaving or scattering, and if they wanted to survive, they had no choice but to make contact with Chan Ji-song. If Chan Ji-song was defeated, then it would count as revenge for Luo Hua. If not, he could create a chance for them to breathe. After thinking for a moment, Li Bangshin finally changed his mind. Li Juan had known this day would come. She understood it, but she still found it annoying. Now that their livelihoods were on the line, they suddenly decided to come knocking without even giving a heads up. Justin felt this was nothing more than a transaction anyway, so they might as well hear the proposal first. Director Kim added that many major figures had come this time, including Mr. Li Bangshin. At those words, Li Ju-un looked at Chan Ji-song with a serious expression. Looking like this, he would definitely be underestimated, so she personally tied Chan Ji-song's hair back for him. Chan Ji-song could not help blushing. Then Li Juan told him to show some presents and remember his status as a king. The two groups finally met, and when Li Bangshin saw that Chan Ji-song did not seem to have much of a leader's aura, he decided to test him a little. Li Bangshin manipulated the sinister energy of the red god Measles ghost and sent it straight toward Chan Ji-song. Chan Ji-song sensed it immediately and could not help thinking that this man really could not hold himself back at all. Instantly, Chan Ji-song summoned his servant god with a mere thought. With just one tiger roar, the Measles ghost was blown apart. The curse instead wrapped itself around Li Bangshin's neck. Fortunately, Chan Ji-song stopped in time and warned him not to test him again, because he still was not very good at controlling his power. Li Bangshin could not help asking what this god's name was. The name, Lady Huan the Tiger, was finally spoken out loud. At that moment, Li Bangshin broke out in a cold sweat and finally understood why Luo Hua had lost. Then, he dropped to the ground and performed a formal bow of respect. The entire room instantly fell silent. His disciple was even more agitated, thinking that his teacher had thrown away every last shred of pride. But Li Bangshin believed this was exactly how far he needed to go. Li Juan bluntly said that first, he had arrogantly tested someone else's strength, and now he was lying to his colleagues. What an old fox. Suddenly, a man stepped forward and introduced himself as company representative Ju Ki-hwan. Justin had actually heard of him before and had seen his name on forums. Ju Ki-hwan sincerely congratulated Golden Cross for discovering the sudden death shaman, and apologized for the disrespect shown by the shaman from his company. Then he looked toward Representative Justin and the sudden death shaman. He said, everyone gathered here had to join hands from now on. But Li Juan stated outright that they had no need to work with them. Ju Ki-hwan asked in return how they planned to survive on this blood-soaked Yoido. What resources did Golden Cross have to fight Osang, especially when the other side even had government support behind them? Li Juan said they would hide Chan Ji-song until this period passed. Ju Ki-hwan countered by asking what they would do if Osang had already taken control of Yoido by the time this period ended. If they joined forces now, they might still have a chance. Just then, an unexpected person suddenly appeared. Lee Tae-ha had actually barged into the meeting alone.